Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission. This is a continuation of a meeting that was to be held originally on April 19th. It is 6:50 and I would like to, 6:50 on May 10th, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation. Recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of this agenda. And with that, let's just jump right into the meeting. We have, to the public, we have a lot on our agenda, so we're going to move quickly as possible. The first item is a memorandum of agreement for 1252 Broadway.
Could we introduce ourselves?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Yes, let's go through, starting with you, Vice Chair Kelly.
Hi. Hi, I'm Robin Kelly. I am the Realtor representative on the commission, and I am also a historic homeowner in Union Square.
Mr. Bingham.
Hi, I'm Alan Bingham. I'm a historic homeowner in Ward 6.
And Mr. Falvey.
Good evening. I'm Ryan Falvey. I'm a resident of Ward 2.
And Mr. Bauer, here you are.
Hi, I'm Dick Bauer, and I'm an attorney, and I was trained as a city planner, and I live in Springfield neighborhood.
I'm Eric Parks, an architect and a historic homeowner. I live in Ward 3. And we have staff.
Oh yes, I'm Sarah White. I'm a senior planner with the Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Division.
Okay, let's jump to the MOA, Memorandum of Agreement for 1252 Broadway. Take a moment to pull that up. Have people had a chance to read that, or they want a moment? Any questions or comments? It went out today, right? Yes.
I believe this is the structure that was demolished without a permit originally.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And I think that the vote was to reconstruct in accordance with the attached plan set. But yes, particular care taken to replicate the Gothic revival styling that was a key characteristic of the demolished building. So that was the outcome of that. And this seems to reflect that.
And in your architectural expertise, Chair Parks, do you believe that has been the case?
It looks that way. The replacement structure at 1252 Broadway is to be constructed in accordance with the attached plan set, with particular care taken to replicate the Gothic revival styling that was a key characteristic of the demolished building. And I think that the plan set, it was really the front facade that was what was going to get retained. And the plan set seems to reflect that, I think. And this has been floated by all the town council and people like that, I assume.
Well, Mr. Chairman, through you, we don't pass our memorandum of agreements through the legal department.
Yes,
Each time
I'm thinking of
we do them because we have a standard standard template that we follow for this. So no, it hasn't been passed through them. We would not normally do that. However, I do see a member of the applicant team that is here, and he does have his hand raised if you would like to take any questions or comments from him.
No, I'm looking at the plan set. I just want to make sure, since the plan set is someone's interpretation of what was there, I would want to make sure that to the greatest extent possible that the replication replicate what was there rather than the drawing. I know it's a subtle distinction, but the drawings do seem to capture the pattern shingles and the deed to the scroll work up in the peak and the hoods over the windows and things like that. So does anybody feel any need to differently describe the fact that we're reproducing what was original
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I have no other comments. If anyone else doesn't, I would entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Let's do a roll call on my screen. Okay, Mr. Bauer,
Aye.
Mr. Baldi,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Kelly.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that moves forward. The next two cases are for 17 and 19 Aldersley Street, and I understand that Vice Chair Kelly is going to recuse herself from this discussion. So,
That's correct. So I will go off screen.
okay, and as you probably noticed, there are two separate item numbers on the agenda for this case, even though it's the same property.
Correct.
Waiting
Thank
through
you.
two things. Okay. All right. So the next case is HPC.ALT 2022.09, 17 through 19 Aldersey Street. The applicant is Paul Morgan. The applicant seeks a certificate of appropriateness to alter an LHD property by altering the masonry of the front facade, replacing the garage doors, and adding a roof deck to an existing detached garage. Do we have an applicant here?
Mr. Chairman, through you, yes, we do. For the applicant who is going to speak, please raise their hand or their agent. Damon Seidel is the architect for the team, and I'm going to unmute him. Damon, would you please ensure that you're unmuted on your end and state your name and address prior to speaking?
My name is Damon Seidel. I am a resident of Somerville at 10 Grandview Ave. Thank you for hearing this case. Paul Morgan purchased the property 1719 Aldersey in, I believe, 2020. And at the time, the garage was in a terrible shape and still is to a large extent, although he's holding it together with some bubble gum on the garage. Both the cast in place concrete structure pieces of the foundation, many of them are exposed, are cracked. Large chunk is taken out of the left side. Rebar is exposed from a roof failure and rusting and rotting away, including the lintel for the doors. And many of the concrete blocks are cracked and badly split, and some chunks are missing. He patched it up as best as he can, so that the parapet, particularly the parapet on the front and the left side while facing it, don't fall down and hurt anybody. And we had a structural engineer out and reviewed it and suggested that we replace all of the masonry block and repair the concrete. So that was our, it was also the, taking the opportunity of doing the repair work, reconstruction work, to add a roof deck and add some amenity space to the property, which does not have a very large rear yard. And so the roof deck on top of the garage with a stair that sneaks up behind the trash enclosure that is existing to the left of the garage. So that's what we're proposing, is to replace the front facade completely with similar concrete masonry units that will be split face, also gray, and add a roof deck on top of the garage. If you are looking at the proposal in front of you, I've had limited success sharing my screen on the GoTo meeting, but I'm happy to try and bring it up if that's helpful for you.
I think we'll have, thank you. I think we'll have the staff report in front of us that has the images that I imagine is everything you'd want to show us.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, David. Is there anything else you want to add?
I think that we have, as shown in the drawings and in the project manual, we've done our best with, particularly with the materials that we're selecting, to create a similar look, although we are proposing removing the stepped parapet, since the entire parapet has to come down from safety, and most of the material is not usable anymore. So once it was gone, and since we were adding a railing behind it, that would be, of course, a straight line across that. I was proposing that it would be a flat parapet as well that would wrap the structure.
Thank you. This is a public meeting. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? I'll open up the meeting for that.
So if any members of the public would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function, and we will call on you as we see you as we scroll through the list. And let's see, could we please unmute Ron Carvalho, please?
Ron Cavallo, you're unmuted on our end. You're self-muted. Please unmute to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, is this the Second Empire? It's really a magnificent property, the Second Empire. It's got 2 structures on the parcel.
Yes.
Beautiful building, absolutely magnificent. These garages are a problem all over the city. And most of them were built in 1910, 1920, and many of them were poorly constructed. This is an absolutely magnificent property, and although I haven't seen the plans, I, in this case, fully support the restoration of the garage. These garages tend to be very unsafe, and I think this is a good deed to the city allowing this. So I support it.
Mr. Carvalho, would you please state your full name and address for the record, please? I
Yeah,
forgot to
my
ask you
name
at the beginning.
Ronald Cavallo. I live at 70 Victoria Street, Somerville. I'm a long-term resident of the city and a significant property owner.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other members of the public, or should we close that portion?
Let me do one more sweep through, Mr. Chairman. And I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay. With that, we'll close the public comment portion of this case and address it, take it up with the commission. Who has thoughts on this? First thoughts from anybody?
I will go. So I think, comfortable with the basic project, which includes putting the deck up there and with the doors that they've chosen. But I really don't like the removal of the stepped parapet. I wanted to ask the folks who are making the proposal whether there are structural reasons why it would be a problem to rebuild the parapet in stepped form. Does that somehow interfere with the functioning of the deck?
I don't think it interferes with the functioning of the deck. Every step, of course, adds more complexity to the waterproofing of the cap of the parapet. And since, I mean, we will be replacing the entire roofing membrane and repairing the roof structure in this process, and was hoping to make it as durable as possible. So in that case, since it will be completely removed in order to, because it needs to be, I was attempting to make it a more durable construction with fewer steps that don't have to be waterproofed as fussily as it would require with a step. That was my thought process. Aesthetically speaking, the horizontal rail behind a stepped parapet to my eye in the elevation looked a little fussy as well. So I was simplifying the form to make the two functions, the structure of the garage and then the added roof deck amenity more harmonious with each other.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that would lead me to the conclusion, my own conclusion, that that despite the complications, perhaps in some waterproofing, that that this design would be much more appropriate if the stepped parapet were reconstructed, and if that were done, then I think I would be satisfied with the rest of this project.
That's just to jump in. I think my thoughts are the same as Mr. Bauer's. Without that stepped parapet, this is basically just a concrete block garage with, it loses, I mean, from a distance, the only thing you really pick up is that stepping, which is kind of a trademark of that style, that time period. I understand, I'm pretty sure that we've thrown in the towel on ever getting those cast stone blocks again. I believe this has come up and I've never actually seen anyone replicate those. Is that correct, Sarah, the staff? Do you know of any cases where we've actually managed to find those?
I do not know, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so then the closest approximation is this, the split face, the rough block that I think the applicant's proposing. And that I get. But I would like to see that form replicated. I understand that there are more ins and outs, but if it can get another 80 years like the previous one did, you should do okay. The only other thing I would look at possibly, I think in our guidelines, typically for roof decks, we encourage people to go with a black rail situation like this so that it tends to go away more. And there's less from the street, you wouldn't see the two as readily, as much contrast between them. I want to see what other people think about that, or if the applicant has strong feelings.
Yeah, the reason that I had selected a white rail specifically was because the railing on the front porch is white and has a similar rhythm of the balusters. They're just vertical balusters, simple square vertical balusters, and so that's what we selected for our product. Was something, although we are proposing AZEK TimberTech system, from a distance, I think what you'll read is simply the pieces and the forms of them, not the material. And we are choosing a premium handrail profile that's more in keeping with the time period, the style. But that's why we chose the white, was to be similar to that on the front of the main structure.
That's given the distance and the separation from the primary structure. Unless somebody else in the commission has a strong thought, I'm fine either way with that. I see your rationale. And the doors, I'm fine with the doors, by the way. Anybody else?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Well, barring any other comments from people, I would propose accepting this proposal with the proviso that the applicant use a stepped cornice line. Before I say that, who else on the commission has thoughts about this, that particular subject? Okay, well, it sounds like Mr. Bauer and I both feel like it ought to be stepped. Do Ryan and Alan have particular thoughts on that?
No, I just think if you step it, it's going to kind of look odd with the horizontal rail behind it. Perhaps a little bit fussy, but I understand your point that it replicates the original design, which was so popular at that point in time. I think my major concern, though, is that if the garages are in that poor condition, are they structurally able to support a roof deck. And as Mr. Cavallo pointed out, a lot of them were poorly constructed. They're damp, they've got mold, they're done with a very light lime sort of a mortar. And they're not very strong. I just wonder whether the structure is going to be sufficient to support it. So, but I'm guessing the architect has consulted an engineer on this and is confident on it.
Yes, that's correct. We have consulted a structural engineer who did an evaluation at the very beginning of this. The first floor plan in the drawings that were submitted, there are additional steel columns that are going in at both right behind the front piers, in between each door, and at the midspan of each of those to support the beams that are above. So in addition to rebuilding and repairing the existing structure, we are adding additional support at the midspan. And instead of relying just on the front concrete masonry unit piers, we are also adding a 4-inch steel post behind it. So that'll shore it up, and those will have full footings as well. So between the repairs and the additional structure, we're confident that the roof deck will be well supported.
So what is the preference of this commission regarding the stepped cornice? I'm hearing two people feel like it ought to be stepped. One is ambivalent. How about Ryan?
I think Alan had made an observation that the fence could be abutting that very closely. I'm not understanding exactly if in the picture where it is not stepped, the fence railing looks clean coming across the top, and it looks as though the railing is pretty much right on the edge. And so if I understand correctly, will the fence railing be directly behind this? And if so, it looks as though you will be able to visualize the fence at parts of this, but maybe not all of it. It would be like it would not be evident maybe at the top of it. And I'm just thinking that may be very, very busy looking or awkward looking, having a fence directly behind that. Does that make sense? What I'm understand?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And looking at the floor plan, it seems like the railing is fairly close to the parapet. Damon, is this floating on the roof, or are you supporting down? You're tying it down?
It is floating on the roof. It's going to there'll be a subdeck structure, so it will essentially be supported simply by gravity on top of the roof. There won't be any fastening through the membrane. And it spans from bay to bay across the newly supported posts that I just mentioned.
And how far from the edge? How far from the edge would that be placed?
It would be pretty close to the front. There is a detail showing the way that I am proposing turning the roof membrane up. So there is a little bit of a canting strip. So it would have to set in, but it's only a matter of a few inches behind the parapet on the front and the left side.
I'm just trying to visualize if you're superimposing on this picture here where the parapet exists, the fence behind that. I'm, to the commission members, I just think that may be busy looking and perhaps a bit awkward looking, where I think that the proposal, as we're looking at with the removed parapet, would be cleaner. That's just, just an observation.
It's hard to tell. 8, 16, 24, 32. So I'm going to guess that your top rail would be a little bit higher than the high point of that, the midpoint of the stepping. but that's just totally spitballing it.
Yeah, the original, the demolition plan of that front facade is on the last page of the PDF, and it does show 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks at the highest point, plus the cast in place concrete band that runs across the entire front. So what did I say, 4 blocks? So 4 times 8 inches, 32 inches. So yeah, it would be right at the top. It would just be poking over the top of the blocks there, likely center point.
So the end of the day, Ryan, I think it's a question of what drives what. If the straight horizontal line is being done in order to conflict less with the new deck, and the deck is kind of driving the future design of this thing, as opposed to being accessory to it. The only other thing, which I guess picking up a little bit on what Ryan is saying, is that the vertical divisions, which to me, I would actually notice that more. If the posts don't align with anything logical in front of it, that would bother me more than the horizontal line of the guardrail.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to tell from the picture where, yeah, the modules of the verticals don't really line up with anything.
No, and that would be because this is a prefab railing system that's driven to some extent by what's available. So obviously it would be even divisions, but we're restricted to what is available there.
Well, Dick, you were the first to bring up the stepped cornice. How we seem to have a little bit of a difference. The two of us who don't care so much and two who do. How important is this in your view?
In my view, it's pretty important. It's the most characteristic aspect of this garage. And since there's no structural reason why it couldn't get rebuilt that way, I think it ought to be. I should say that my inclination is the same as yours, that that having the railings be black will make them disappear more, and to the extent that they don't actually line up with the piers, that's probably particularly important to do it that way. But I have less strong feelings about the color of the railing than I do about the parapet itself.
Yeah. And that's to me, that's the only thing that it remains that's important about this historically garages is that step parapet that reflects that time period. Otherwise, this is now a 1980s creation. So, you know, my preference would be to keep the stepping as well, and let the railing just be the way it is. I think a black railing would go away. I see your point about it matching, but it's such a different location, completely different context within the property. I don't know that anyone's going to really say, oh, look, the white there matches the white on the front railing.
If that's the case, would it be appropriate to go with a different, maybe a narrower posts, narrower balusters, even?
Oh yeah,
that are black, like, and trying to replicate the sizes of the balusters and rails, et cetera, but going, and in which case it would probably look more, the railing itself would probably look a lot more modern.
Yeah, when I do this kind of, I mean, a lot of guidelines will actually encourage this to look a little bit fire escapey as a way to kind of work around that, where it looks like something that was added just to go away. I know that if you use this is the AZEK, the Trex, I think they make an aluminum system that's got narrower posts and all around just a little bit sleeker. I personally would be better with something that is narrower and just kind of goes away more. That's my preference on that. And then have the step parapet be more of a showpiece. Like from the street, you're not going to see a whole lot. It's just sort of not front and center. But that's the way I would go with it. Dick, what do you think about that?
That would be my inclination as well.
I think I
Would that
agree
work?
with you both.
Okay. Would those work as conditions then, Damon, if we update it to a stepped parapet with a black, I mean, I would be okay with the black railing you proposed or a narrower, sleeker looking railing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think not being entirely familiar with the process of how, if it's approved with conditions, how that goes forward. Is that just a advisory thing that we do after the fact? Or the reason I
I think
ask
we
is
would,
just from a timing point of view, because we've now been, this is now, I think, 3 months since we got pushed twice. I'm guessing, well, I know for a fact that my client, Paul Morgan, is anxious to get going, particularly because we have to secure a contractor and hopefully get this done before it gets cold again later.
yeah, no, we would send you packing with an approved solution tonight, so you wouldn't need to come back for this.
Okay.
I think we would
my only hesitation to say yes outright to a set of conditions then is because of things like pricing and availability that I haven't been able to look into other, I mean, the stepping, I think, yes, the railing, I just don't necessarily want to be locked into something that would be either much more expensive, difficult to procure, if that's where we ended up at the end of the night. The stepping, I think, because it's the same material and it's just a different configuration of it, that I'm comfortable with that, if that's what you choose to place as a condition. But the railing, I just haven't researched what's available if we went with black or narrower or metal or some other version. So I just want to be
okay.
careful about that.
I would be okay with just saying the black finish in the railing product that you propose, so you're not having to look for a new manufacturer.
Okay.
How does, Sarah, by the way, as the one who's writing this, how does it sound to you?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I understand correctly through you, the condition would be to construct the stepped parapet and to simply have a darker color on the rails. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, we can write the condition. We can write 2 separate conditions that'll address those items.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have the approval tonight, yes.
Yes, and to and Damon, to your question before, the conditions aren't advisory, but they're conditions just like on zoning, that if they're there, then they need to be executed. So just so that you're aware of that.
Okay. Yeah. Then I would just ask if Paul Morgan, who I believe is probably on, if he just wants to chime in and just give a thumbs up to, so I don't step on his toes as the owner and the one who I'm representing.
Yes, that's fine. Damon, I defer to you.
Okay, great. Then I think we are all set.
All right.
Those two.
I would entertain a motion then that vote that we approve the design, the proposal, with the change to using a stepped parapet that matches the original in profile, and we switch to a black finished railing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Roll call, Mr. Bauer,
Aye.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes,
and I vote yes as well. And then the next case is you folks again. So let me read it into the record. HBC.ALT 2022.20 17 through 19 Aldersley Street, applicant Paul Morgan. The applicant seeks a certificate of appropriateness to alter an LHT property by replacing windows and doors, installing vents and enclosing windows. And we still have an applicant here. Do you want to give us a quick rundown, Damon, about what you're doing?
Yes, this is Paul Morgan, and my wife is unavailable. She's watching the children, but she's also the co-owner. I've been given a certificate of non-applicability for the enclosing the windows on the north side, so I'm not going to discuss that this evening. The staff report recommends moving the kitchen vent to the north side so that it won't be visible, and I accept that recommendation. The staff report recommends the doors that I've proposed. So unless you wish to discuss that more, I know that we have a busy agenda, so I'll just move on to the last item, which is the windows. I'm proposing replacing 5 windows on the northwest and northeast rear sides of the building with Pella Architect Series windows. These have been installed at and approved at 16, 14, and 12 Aldersea Street, which is across the street. These windows are 100 feet from the sidewalk. The staff report photos are taken from the property at approximately 15 feet, so they don't show what it looks like from the sidewalk. With these windows, I would be removing the storm windows. So I view this as one that's very far away, and 2, it's a bit of an in-kind replacement, and without the storm windows, will be an improvement. As far as my motivate, I don't know that this commission cares about my reasoning for wanting those, but the windows are held together by caulk and L brackets, and I've done some weather stripping and fixed ropes, but the windows are still wobbly, and especially the bottom of the bottom sashes are soft, and a screwdriver pierces them very easily. So I don't think I can. It's hard to work with them. It's hard to weather strip the horizontal seams, which because the wood is shrunken. That's because of the placement of the locks and the fact that weather stripping doesn't last very long. It's hard to achieve something effective. I do not view the storm windows as an acceptable way to compensate for these aging windows, because I've got tenants that just can't operate them. They require a great deal of finger strength and dexterity, and I don't think that helps. It's also a 4-step process to open a storm window, opening the inside window, opening the screen, opening the storm window, and then closing the screen. So it just doesn't even happen even with the people who are physically able to do it. So I know everyone, I know you have a busy agenda, so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak about this case?
Any members of the public, please use the raise your hand function and we will call on you.
I see Ron Cavallo first, followed by Brian Clancy. I will unmute Ron Cavallo first on our end. You are unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville, Mass. I'm a bit of an authority on historic windows, and more than a bit of one. And the owner has really clearly articulated the need here, and the windows that he selected are extremely appropriate for this magnificent property, and I fully support his request.
Thank you. We had somebody else?
Next up is Brian
Yeah.
Clancy. You are unmuted.
Hi, I assume everybody can hear me? All right, I'm the sales rep from Pella that's been helping out Paul with this process. So I just wanted to let you know I was here should you guys need anything. I helped out the folks across the street at 16 Aldersea when they replaced their windows a few years ago. So just essentially wanted to let you know I was here if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll let you guys get on with it.
Any other members of the public want to speak?
Mr. Chair, I do not see any other members with their hand raised.
Then I will close the public comment portion of this case and ask the commission what you all think. It's a vent, a door, and some windows. And they're all in the back L, that back portion of this house? Side facing? Okay.
I have no issues with the vent or the doors, frankly, Chair Parks. I'm just a bit concerned about the windows. Be nice to be able to restore the original windows.
Yeah, I don't either. The existing doors, this is an improvement, what you're suggesting. The vent, if you can move it back, that's great. Ultimately, we can't, you can't not have a vent hood, so I appreciate your ability to move it. The windows are a couple issues. Yes, the Pella, assuming you're talking about an all wood window and not a clad, we've accepted that in the past as a replacement. We never really, we need to get more proactive about determining whether windows are restorable and to see if the owner of the property is actually consulted with someone who does that work professionally, because it often there's not that isn't really fleshed out. The thing with windows is it's theoretically possible to restore any window. It's a matter of to what extent you have to go through hierarchies to do it. So there is a point where you're throwing so much epoxy in there and so much work, and it's not really a really crisp deadline for that or cutoff. But it would be useful if applicants would have gone through some of those steps first to say we got a price and this is what what's needed for that. The other issue is with a property like this, it's easier to say yes, those rear windows are okay because they're way far in back. They're very minimally visible. They're not part of the central mass, so there would be less of an issue for me to see those replaced back there than others. But as we've seen, often the same applicant will come back 6 years later and say, look, we replaced those windows, so we want to do the whole house now. And so it's the slippery slope where you suddenly set a precedent for a building that makes it seem more rational when it might not be. Those are my thoughts. Who else wants to talk about this case?
Yeah, what are the windows on the rest of the house is one question I'd ask. And the other question is that when I look at the current photograph of the left elevation, I see 4/4s and 2/2s. So I see a mix of windows. I'm not exactly sure. I think you're proposing 2/2s. If I look at the front of the house, it looks like they're 1/1s, but I'm not sure because I can't get that close to it to see. There doesn't seem to be any consistency in the windows. And I'm not sure if the windows in the rest of the house are original or whether they're replacements or what.
Our staff report feels that they are original. Is this your staff report, sir?
Why is there a mix of 1/1s, 2/2s, and 4/4s? That doesn't seem like that's original at all.
Mr. Chairman, to your point, no, this is Ms. Chekowitz's staff report.
Okay. Yeah, looking through the staff report, I actually see a 6/6. So maybe the applicant can address that. Paul, are you around still?
I think if you're looking on the picture on the northwest side, one of the windows, I believe, has a storm window that's open at 50%, and so it's making it look like a 4/4. not sure if that addresses what you're speaking to, but it
I'm
could
looking
be.
at the left elevation on page 8. In fact, it's to the right of the door. It's a 4/4.
Yeah, I think that that's probably a storm window that's making it look like it's a 4/4.
Oh, okay.
Like that the storm window happens to be opened at approximately the midpoint,
Right.
Oh, I got
to
you.
get the impression that the two sashes are divided. Which is not to say that they're, I mean, certainly on the rear side, there are some, I mean, the north side, which is the rear side, there are some windows that don't follow. There's also some narrower windows that are 1/1. So I think the staff report recommends something along, I'd have to reread it, something, a preference for a certain style.
Where are the, in the staff report, there are two windows that are 6/6 photographed up close. Where are those located?
Those are on the north side. I'm surprised that that's in the staff report, but I've been given a certificate of non-applicability for, well, I don't know. What page are you looking at? Oh, I think maybe you're looking at the windows at the, on the final pages. And the ones that are 6/6 are on the north side. At the time I submitted the application, I was not given a certificate of non-applicability for the north side, which is not viewable from any public right of way. But later on in the process, after we had a couple of continuances, I requested one, and so that I could start work on the by right portion of the project. So those are no longer, the 6/6s are no longer relevant to the application.
I gotcha. Okay. And who else? Dick and Ryan, do you have any thoughts on this?
So I also share concerns about precedent of taking out existing windows, which I assume part of the original historic fabric of the house, and replacing them, absent of showing that they really are not repairable. I understand the concerns that the owner has raised and that these look sort of generally appropriate for this purpose if the windows are going to get replaced, but I'm always reluctant to lose existing historic fabric that will never be able to be put back.
Okay. Just to be clear, the one you're proposing is an all wood color, or is it a clad?
Ryan, could you speak to that? Could you unmute Ryan Clancy?
Ryan is unmuted.
So the proposal was clad simply because that's what we did at 16 Aldersea. That being said, I believe in discussions with Paul, he's open to the idea of wood. I was simply proposing the exact same thing that was done across the street, because he knew that got approved a few years ago. So he had just asked for the exact same window. So if the switch to an all wood window would make that difference. Again, I don't want to speak for Paul, but I'm assuming that would be acceptable to him, and it's something that we can certainly accomplish.
Here's thank you. The global thought is we're supposed to keep windows unless they can't be salvaged. It's the general principle with historic districts. You keep things unless you can't. And when we have a proposal that says we need to replace these because we can't keep them, we need to have, generally speaking, some sort of way of evaluating whether someone went through the legwork of finding out what's involved with keeping them. And even though it might arrive right back to where you are today, I feel like we can't really approve these until we know that that was explored, what's involved with making them workable. I get that you don't like opening, your tenants don't like to have to open to a storm in the main window, but that situation exists everywhere in your
And
house.
in many cases cannot. It's an accessibility issue, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it's sort of like the formality. If we don't require that, then what are we doing here? Ellen, would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
yes.
So,
I have a mansard house that's similar to this. And unfortunately, before I bought it, the owner replaced the windows, some of the windows with vinyl. I was able to salvage the wood windows that were left and actually restore them. But I find that the vinyl windows still stick, and they're still difficult, and they're still problematic. And quite frankly, I'd like to replace them with the originals, because you can't get that sort of old wood quality anymore that I still have in the existing windows out the back. But yeah, most windows can be reclaimed, and I understand the issues of cleaning the window and also having to go through a multi-step process to open the window. But we talk about a beautiful old house here, which has got a wonderful historic fabric to it. And to me, it's a stunning house from the street. It's sitting up there on the high side and looks absolutely delightful. And so if you're following the original design guidelines of the house, and even though I appreciate that these windows will be at the back and the line of sight from the street is still there, but it'll be diminished, not like the front, I'd still prefer to see these windows restored if they could, frankly. And like Dick Bauer said, I'm afraid of creating a precedent here, because windows and doors are just so essential to the aesthetic of a historic house. And they're listed that way in the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for us.
so what I'm hearing, I'm thinking maybe what we should do is separate the items if the applicant is willing, and vote to move forward the doors and the vent, and maybe punt the windows if they want to do some legwork on that and come back next hearing on that particular matter. I'm wondering if that's a rational way to go forward with this. How about you, staff? Do you think does that work for you?
You're on mute, Mrs. White.
Sure.
Perhaps Chair Parks, we could ask the applicant how they feel about that.
Yeah, applicant, how does that work for you?
I'm not sure how long it would take to do that research, so you could just, I mean, you could just reject the windows, and then when I can get some window companies to come, it's difficult to get people to come around, then I could reapply at that point. I can't commit to. Oh, I just don't know if I can commit to having gotten all the documentation 1 month from now.
Yeah, I think in order to help you, I think that staff could probably provide you with a list of various places that actually do window reconditioning, from whom you could inquire about this. Sorry, Sarah, putting you in for extra work. You're still on mute, Sarah.
We can't hear you,
we still
Sarah.
can't hear you, Sarah.
Larry, you're on mute.
or expect technical difficulties. I think I would propose that you maybe just continue the window portion and either withdraw. If we vote it down, then you can't bring it back for 2 years. So I would suggest you just either withdraw that part or we continue that, and you just have a window person come over and look at it, and they should be able to tell you right away.
So I can continue to request continuances if I'm not prepared.
Yeah. I'm just, that gives you more wiggle room because it might come back to that, they might come out and say it's going to cost you $4,000 a window or something crazy like that, in which case it's a different matter. So I would think if we just continue the window part of this and vote on the vent and the doors, that gives you the most flexibility to call somebody and maybe they could get you a quick number by next month. And if you decide not to, you can just withdraw that or however you want to proceed.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's do that. Then I would entertain a motion that we approve the replacement door and the vents as proposed, and we continue the replacement windows for this case. Nick, Ms. White, if we can't hear you, but thumbs up if that works for you, if you have concerns. Okay. All right, all in favor? Or we need a motion for that.
Oh,
So moved.
Second?
seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No roll call. Mr. Bauer,
Aye.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Now we can bring Ms. Vice Chair Kelly back into the room. There you are. The next case is 9 through 11 Campbell Park, which is HPC.ALT 2022.16, 9 through 11 Campbell Park. Applicant is Ace Residential Solar LLC. Owner is Eugene Meerman. The applicant seeks a certificate of appropriateness to alter the LHT property by installing solar photovoltaic panels cells on the roof. Do we have an applicant here for this project?
I am seeing Cabin Saw raising their hand. You are unmuted on our end.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, yes, my name is Kaveen and I'm an engineer with Ace Residential Solar. And I'm here today with an application to install solar panels at 9 Campbell Park. So we have 23 solar panels, LG 435 watt solar panels, and we are proposing the install on a southeast facing roof. So the panels are gonna go on only on this single roof, but the electrical equipment will be on the other side of the house. So I don't know if you, I don't know if you have access to the design right now, but happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who'd like to speak about this case?
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Welcome
Oh,
back.
good. Hallelujah. If there are any members-
We received a letter about this too, didn't we?
yes, you did. Yes, you did. From Mr. Cavallo. So any members of the public who would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you could unmute Ron Cavallo, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Unmuted.
Yeah, once again, Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville, Mass. Yes, I did write a letter supporting this. I own a historic property in the neighborhood. I'm very familiar with the district. where do I start? The city of Somerville has a 2050 mission to be net zero. It's never going to happen unless there's major technological changes, and I, as of now, don't see those in the forefront. That whole discussion about windows makes me think about energy efficiency. And I want to make a note about the cost to repair these old windows. It's completely, if you can find somebody to do it, it's completely exorbitant. And I know that I can support that factually, but setting that aside, it's my understanding that there's a federal mandate, even in historical districts, to support solar. And if this city is going to actually walk its talk and actually make a serious attempt
Thank
to
you.
make this a net zero city by 2050, we have to adopt a new way of thinking. And solar right now is the one technology that we have. And it may not fit into a purist idea of what historic districts should look like. So be it. Get over it. Wake up. This is where we have to be. And, you know, frankly, I see this commission as an impediment to the goals that this whole country needs to actually get serious about and actually implement. So, and I want to say, I don't think there's anything beautiful about solar panels, but I don't care. It's not about beauty. It's about being forward thinking and actually making some substantive change. And I think the city talks the talk, but does not implement the goals. And frankly, I think this commission is an impediment to the 2050 goal by making what I think are unrealistic demands on homeowners and overreaching. And I, as a property owner in this direct neighborhood, fully support this and the whole idea of solar for the city in historical districts. That's the end of
Thank
my
you.
comment.
Any other members of the public want to speak?
I'm not seeing any additional hands.
Then I will close the public comment portion of this case. Just to address Mr. Cavallo, I don't think we've ever not allowed someone to install solar panels. I think there was one project where there was a slate roof and we required some more exploration to find out how to install it without removing the slate roof. And I think the general thought with solar panels is, yes, they're important and it's not our place to deny them, but what we do protect is the loss of original detail. And generally, if you put, like, such as on this roof, solar panels, they are fully reversible. They can come off when you re-roof it or whatever. If it's a slate roof, we require that that slate be kept. And if one were to want to remove the slate and put asphalt for the sake of putting solar panels up, then we would require someone to get creative and get a slate worker to actually put the supports in. So really what we do is if there's any flexibility, encourage people to move them away from the street line if possible. And we also are taking interest in where the conduit runs are and the service for it so that they're as minimally visible as possible. And in this particular case, I don't have any issues with the location of these panels. They obviously are maxing out that exposure of the roof line. But I jumped ahead. Anybody else in the commission want to talk about this?
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that, Chair Parks, and that we've never actually turned down any application. In fact, it's part of the city's policy that we do look very seriously at installing solar panels where we can. And I think you're right. There was just that one installation with slate roof where we required a special look at it. And I'm surprised that Mr. Cavallo wasn't aware of this, being as he's so well informed. And the only other thought I'd have on that is that his comment on the exorbitant cost of restoring wood windows, compared to the cost of the Home Depot type windows, which unfortunately I have in my house, yes, they are expensive, but compared to the cost of the windows that the previous applicant was talking about, no, they're pretty consistent with cost. And also, I'm sure that if you looked and Google some of the investigations and comparisons, there's some good tests that have been done in Canada and in Michigan on the difference between replacement windows of various brands and actually restoring wood windows with new storms. So that might be something, Mr. Cavallo, you could take some time to have a look at, because I think it would be very informative for you. But I noticed that this dwelling that we're talking about has triple tabs on it, brown triple tabs, which is an asphalt roof. So quite frankly, I have no objection whatsoever to this, and I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Ellen.
I agree. Certainly have no questions or qualms with the panels. I am wondering what flexibility there is for the conduit, which was described by the installer as going on the left side of the house, which looks like it would be very near the sidewalk, and just whether there's any flexibility to install that farther back on the property or at the back of the house.
Yeah, unfortunately, the utility requires disconnect, solar system disconnect, and another meter to be installed next to their existing meter. So that's where the existing meter is, and that's why we have to keep other solar equipment next to it.
Okay. One of the, Ms. White, I don't know what we need to do about this, but in the report, there's a discussion of moving things to locations that aren't visible. So any conduits shall be located so as to not be visible from the right of way. So that's not a condition that could be met if the requirement from the fire department or ISD or whatever is that it be installed next to the electric meter.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. So what I would recommend is that whatever motion that the commission makes, the commission also recommends striking that particular condition and note the condition number. And that way that won't impede the installation next to the existing electrical.
Okay, because that seems like that would be an issue for any of these cases that come up.
Correct.
Okay.
And thank you, Vice Chair Kelly. Looking at the photo on the left side on page 6 of the report, there's already a pretty beefy weather ahead, the conduit run up for the service coming up. So I imagine this will just be another conduit that runs adjacent to that down to a new panel. Is that correct, the applicant? I forgot your name.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, have we discussed this enough? Anybody want to make a motion?
I move that we vote to accept the application with the conditions as noted in the report, except that we will strike the line about requiring the conduit to be not visible from the public way.
Second the motion.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Mr. Bauer?
Aye.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Bingham?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next case is HPC.ALT 2022.19 50A Spring Street. Applicants are Jeff O'Neill and Claire Pico O'Neill. Applicant seeks a certificate of appropriateness to alter an LHD property by altering existing window openings, the addition of a Juliet balcony, the extension of a first floor porch, and the addition of a second floor porch with pergola on the left elevation. Do we have an applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do. Would the spokesperson for the applicant please raise their hand, use the raise your hand function so we can identify you? Christopher Brown, is that you? Could we unmute Christopher Brown, please?
There are two Christopher Browns, both are bouncing back and forth. I appear to have unmuted them.
Can you hear me?
You should be able to talk now, Christopher.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. You've seen the drawings, I take it, the package?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Here to answer questions if need be.
If that's all, then I would open the public comment portion of this meeting. Any members of the public want to speak, please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see that anyone has their hands raised.
I have a Jeff O'Neill.
Jeff O'Neill is a member of the applicant team.
Yeah, Jeff can absolutely speak as the applicant and owner.
So you can, to speak as the applicant and owner, but I think right now you're taking public comment from the rest of the public, and I don't see anybody else. So I recommend that you can close the public comment portion of the hearing, Chair Parks, and then allow Jeff to speak as the applicant and owner, and then as part of the applicant team.
Okay, I will close the public comment portion of this case. And yeah, the applicant would like to continue with their presentation.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff O'Neill of 50 Spring Street, and I'm here with my wife, Claire. And I guess I'd like to make a few comments. I guess one thing is I just want to make sure that we addressed all the specific changes, because I think there were some, I guess, misunderstandings with the report that we submitted. And I'd also like to comment in some detail about our proposed changes underneath the gable. That's changing the single window to the Juliet balcony and replacing underneath that 2 windows with a set of 3 windows. And the staff report was not in approval of those changes and cited, I guess, the architectural style. But we submitted many examples of Gothic Revival architecture. And I guess in my view, I believe that, those examples of Gothic Revival architecture that we submitted, strongly support the changes that we would like to make. There's many examples of Gothic Revival architecture with balconies, including Juliet balconies. Another concern was, I guess, the differences between the windows on the gables in the front of the house and the gable on the side of the house, that those would now look different. In the report, it talked about the rhythm, which as my understanding is what that meant. And in looking at the Gothic Revival examples, it seems that there's lots of examples where windows under one gable are quite different from windows under other gables. I'm happy to point out specific pictures if that would be helpful. And I guess another comment in the staff report was that the changes would be overwhelming for a facade of that size. But looking at the Gothic Revival examples that we submitted, I would say that they tend to be quite overwhelming, much more overwhelming than what we have. And I guess in my view, the changes that we propose to make would make the house more consistent with the Gothic revival style than the current conditions. And, we'd love to be able to make these changes. I think it would make the house look better and, it would make us a lot happier as homeowners as well.
Thank you. Okay. So I hope people have read this, but there are a number of changes, that just being one of them. That's probably the most noticeable from the street. And maybe we should start off by addressing the rear portion. Well, does anybody have any burning thoughts before we talk about this more?
I'll share some thoughts, and thank you to the applicant for sharing your kind of approach to thinking about things. And certainly you're correct that there are lots of Gothic revival properties that are very elaborately detailed and have varied design elements and that kind of thing. I think one of the concerns that I have is that the alterations that are proposed will stand in stark contrast to the remainder of the house, that it will feel very obvious what sections have been amended and what pre-existed any of that work. And it also focuses very tightly all of these details in a very small section of the overall property, where it's on that one portion of that one side. And it just seems really to interrupt the rhythm. It seems very, very busy and overwhelming with the oversized window for the Juliet balcony and the pergola and just all of it. Just seems like a lot to me. And where the rest of the house has a very serene, simple feel to it, and then it gets very tight and busy in the areas that are being proposed to be worked on. And so I'm hoping that we can find some solutions to make it feel a little more harmonious and appropriate.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I kind of like it, actually. I think it takes a pretty average looking house and turns it into a delightful little house. And that, I know there's an objection generally to the Juliet balcony, but I've seen Juliet balconies on other Gothic revival homes. And I don't think that it intrudes terribly. I think it's a very interesting proposition.
Can I ask the applicant, is the proposed door and balcony, is that all custom woodwork, or are you using a stock door?
Chris Brown, architect. It's all custom, and what we tried to do, maybe not successfully in finding precedents to put into our presentation. The idea would be to have a rectangular pair of doors that were approximately the width of the typical window, and that ideally at the top in a Gothic-like arch, subtly completing the sort of upper light portion. I think there might be a muntin or two running horizontally across, but to try to tone it down to fit in, to speak to Vice Chair Kelly's focus, to kind of fit in a rectilinear way and not cause too much attention, but still maybe have a little interest there in a peaked Gothic arch window. I might add, initially, this building has been or was characterized as Italianate by your committee or by whoever was inventorying the historic stuff. So we had started off in an Italianate direction, and then thankfully were redirected in a more Gothic revival way. So we've bandied about with the different styles, and anyway, I hope that's enough description on the subtle but intriguing Juliet balcony door that we're interested in. I think also where we might need some help, and maybe you guys could provide some guidance, is if a Juliet balcony were to be accepted, figuring out the rail and balustrade and the appropriate type of balustrade. I don't know if a turn dowel baluster is actually what we're after, or if it's without being too flamboyant, maybe it's a scrolled board that's repeated, or something of that nature. But anyway, we could certainly use some help with opinion on that.
Well, we seem to be focusing at the moment just on that part of this proposal, and so I'll weigh in. I guess I feel a bit more like Vice Chair Kelly does, in that this is, yes, you can find precedents out there, as some of the photos you have attached to your report, your proposal, for some pretty elaborate Gothic arch windows with diamond grills and stuff like that. I don't know that this ever would have been in a house of this kind of an urban sort of Gothic light. And I don't know how much detail has been removed when they recited this, if this ever had a more grandiose set of detailing that could have happened in a Gothic revival. I suspect it was always fairly simple. So I'm kind of been skeptical that that could be installed in a way that would not look a bit like a wart on an otherwise pretty simple Gothic. Its only remaining Gothic revivalness is the double peaks there. I think every other aspect of the detailing has been removed from it. So I don't want to say absolutely not, but I'm not quite sold yet on what that is. And I would kind of want to see a little bit more lingering on that particular element before just saying, yes, do it. Just to hit the other parts of this, since there's a lot more going on with this proposal, that the stuff that's going on in the kind of the knuckle, as I would call it, the pergola, I'm less concerned there about that. It's not, they tended not to get super fussy on the back elements with these things. That would be more of a utilitarian thing. I just imagine it was a later addition, or it was a single story that got pushed up or something. I'm not sure. But I walked by the house, and I think what's back there, especially the door with the side lights, is almost not visible at all. So I'm a little more forgiving of what's going on there. It's that side Juliet balcony. The triple windows beneath it, by the way, I'm not a big fan of adding that third window between the other two to have a bank of windows there. I see why you want to do it, but I think it's such a fundamental change of that particular part of the building.
Yeah, I guess for me as the owner, the Juliet balcony is the more important part, and it would be easier to let go of the third window on the first floor.
Yeah, but I don't want to say don't do that, but I'm sort of feeling like with Robin there, it could look okay. It could also look really kind of out of character, and I don't really think it's fleshed out quite yet. I know Alan said you're liking it. How about Dick and Ryan? What are your opinions on this?
You're muted, Mr. Bauer.
Still muted.
Okay, oh, sorry.
There.
So I've,
Now you're-
okay, thanks for your patience. So I was saying, I think I'm bothered more by the windows than by the balcony. I mean, this is a house that already has a porch. The second floor enclosed area doesn't look to me like it was original to the house. And so putting an open balcony up there is probably closer to what it was like originally than what is there now on the second floor. I don't know what other people think about that. Do you think I'm misreading the house?
I didn't follow you quite, Dick. You're talking about the side porch?
The side porch, so it's, as I'm seeing it in the picture, it looks like it's opened on the first floor and enclosed on the second floor, but the second floor enclosure looks like it's probably not original to the house. You know, other people read it the way I am.
Talking about the existing?
The existing one, which
Um,
doesn't look to me like it's original to the house.
Yeah, it seems like it could have been an addition, and the second floor porch with the pergola, I mean, there's the pergola, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. But even just that porch doesn't make much sense in the context of this house.
Oh,
No,
I see what you're saying. So there's an extension of the upper floor. Yeah, I'm looking at the photo on page 8. Huh. So am I reading this correctly that the proposal looks like the second floor wall sticks out more than the first floor wall. I didn't notice that before.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so you'd have a porch that's narrower on the upper floor than the lower floor because it reaches more into the footprint. I see. I don't think the porch that's there is at all original.
You think there was probably no porch there at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that L, so clearly they added the back mass on more recently, but I wonder if this was originally a 1-story rear L off for kitchen or something.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
So to get back to you, Robin, your concern is that the appropriateness of putting a 2-story porch off the side there.
Yeah, it just, I mean, it feels more like a nod to, you know, a 1920s two-family or something like that. And the pergola is just so busy and unclear what purpose it's serving. It just feels very cluttered. There's just so much going on, which stands in stark contrast with the remainder of the house.
Part of the motivation on our side for expanding the porch is that there's kind of sort of a hollow space, you know, in between the rest of the building there. The idea is just to use that. So the porches do not extend beyond the side wall of the front there. So it's just filling up the space between the two houses, you know, which is otherwise kind of like a vacuum there.
Well, who else has
I'll
thoughts
put
about that? Thank you.
I have a couple of observations. I agree with Vice Chair Kelly's concerns about the porches. I think it would extending the porch on the first floor would encroach on the entryway of the unit to the left a bit. You know, it may be easier actually just kind of like trying to integrate the entryway and wrap that all the way around the corner, maybe a bit more uniform doing something like that, although I imagine they're two separate properties. I think that the extension of the adding the pergola and the addition of the balcony on the second floor too, just standing alone would make it a bit busy. So I'm visually having a hard time seeing how that would fit in and enhance the appearance. In the picture on page 8, I think also when you're looking at that, it just shows the uniformity of the 3 gable ends, which I think are really kind of fantastic aspects of this house. And they each have the single windows underneath them, kind of nicely framed. I think if you were to put in that Juliet deck and that the window with the pointed top on that, it would throw off what I think is a very kind of attractive visual appearance from the street right now of the three gable ends with identical types of windows. And I agree with the comments I've heard also on the addition of the third window on the first floor. I think that would just I think that would be a bit busy, but so I support the comments I've heard from the other commission members.
Alan and Dick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I understand where Ryan's coming from, but on the other hand, I do like option 1 that the applicant is talking about. I think it would enhance the place. And to talk to Commissioner Kelly, Vice Chair Kelly's concern about the pergola, if you look at the porch and then you look at the verticals going up in option 1 especially, it makes sense to have some sort of roofing structure there, and the pergola in that sense makes sense to me, because it extends that vertical line up and gives that appearance of height.
Which I think then competes with what is the most distinctive feature of the property, which are the gables, the side and the front gables. Because you're elevating that piece and adding something else, just detracting from.
Well, I think it changes the focus rather than distracts.
Yeah, which
My
I don't
opinion.
want to do with a historic house.
Or compliments, depending on your opinion.
Or compliment.
So what is the roof like over the second floor where we think a porch was enclosed right now?
You mean next to the pergola?
Well, basically where the pergola is proposed. So looking at the picture on page 8, where there's the side porch open on the first floor, closed on the second floor. Presumably has a roof over it. And that's how it looks to me in the drawings, if I'm understanding them correctly.
It's the roof is a double pitched roof, so that the peak, in theory, I don't know, might align with an original bearing wall. But like you guys, I was as suspicious that this thing had been operated on however many decades ago. And it has been, if the upper peak is maybe an 812, this lower extended piece looks like it's a 612 or even 512, and pokes that second floor volume out over the head of over the line of the porch below, or line of the would-be bearing wall below. So it's a complicated little roof that now has photovoltaics up on top. And one of the thoughts here was just to dovetail into the last project's comments, was that, you know, maybe this pergola could help disguise a little bit, certainly from the driveway view for the residents, but maybe even for others from the street, sort of that initial view of the PV solar panels that extend downward. So yeah, the double porch effort to, you know, accentuate the verticality, which Gothic loves, is there. It's, I think the rectangles that are created by the first and second floor try to be as proportionally true as they can, sort of aesthetically. And I think at one point we actually had the pergola flying a little higher above, and thanks to the guidance of the folks at Historic, it was brought down to align ideally with the eave line of the adjacent, I think it's a 1980s barn renovation, second unit addition in the back. So we were trying to pick up some lines to make it less busy, yet at the same time have a new sort of, albeit historic, inspired, you know, piece out in front that, you know, hopefully doesn't make too many waves, but provides the residents with, you know, some added exterior space, albeit not very deep, but a place to run out and have a cup of coffee from their bedroom level or guest bedroom level. So, you know, there's functionality embedded in with this, as well as an aesthetic desire to not be too loud or overwhelming or overbearing. But and then I'll just add one last piece, which is the 3 bays that are there, sort of the one if you're looking from the driveway on the side elevation, the one to the right that meets the original front volume of the house, where the stair is and that sort of thing, that is tucked and hidden behind. I don't think there's too much of a view of that, but embedded in that is a stair upward to the first level porch, and then a small stair down below, which allows, you know, great functionality because they don't have at grade access to their basement presently. So it allows you to kind of sneak underneath the stairs that run above and break through the existing foundation wall that's deep back within presently and would remain that way, with an entrance door down there. So there were a lot of competing functional and aesthetic pieces to this, and you know, they've been woven together in a way that tried to, you know, as always, you can never do it perfectly in every category, but is trying to achieve at least 51% in all of those categories. So anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, I see your point, Vice Chair Kelly, about that. I'm wondering if a happy medium would be just to have the upper level without the pergola, but with the guardrail to have the purpose of that back extension is more of a transition from the front mass to the back, and it doesn't want to feel, I mean, philosophically, it's more of a horizontal. It's not the primary expression of Gothic revivalness there. That was sort of an add-on to it. And getting really fussy with that knuckle there it is a little bit excessive. Just since I'm scrolling past it, of the 2 options, if we went with one, I would go with the vertical, the option A, 2 orientations of the brackets. Who else hasn't? Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Have we all spoken? Dick, did you? express your ultimate thoughts on this?
So I'm not sure that I did fully. I think I don't like the windows, which really changed the character, I think, a lot. As I said, I'm less opposed to the porches on the side, although I also don't like the pergola on top, which seems really out of character. I understand that it's been put up in order to give more verticality. I think I would be, since I'm reading the photograph is indicating that there's actually an existing roof up there now. I would be happier keeping that existing roof and having the new porch go up to it so the porch gets opened up, but the roof remaining, which seems to me more characteristic.
I don't think they're proposing to take away a roof, Dick. I think this would get. So just to, are you proposing to have the outer edge of the new 2-floor side porch be at the same level as the existing railing at the first floor? Or are you pulling the whole thing out further?
I believe we're holding the line.
Okay.
But as I'm looking at the picture on page 8, it looks like there is an enclosed area on the second floor with a roof that is essentially in the same line as the open porch railing on the first floor. Maybe I'm misreading it, but that's what it looks like to me.
So Dick, if you take a look at page 28 of the report, there's a rendering that gives a different perspective.
Okay.
That may be helpful.
But thank you.
And deeper back into that presentation, there is a building section, I think, right, that's taken through at that point.
Okay, so that rendering, that's really helpful. Thank you so much for pointing that out. So that makes it look like I'm being misled by the picture on page 8 into thinking that that wall is in line with the first floor porch when in fact it's not in line. Or now that I'm looking at this, it looks like the porch extends farther out from the house than the existing first floor porch does.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that was my
misunderstood you. Yeah, I thought that was the line you meant that we were holding. So.
No, I can understand that's.
Yeah, we're advancing that current first floor porch is sort of the equivalent of what you'd see on these ranch burgers out, beyond the outer belt. It's just a little 3-foot deep farmer's porch. It's not super helpful from a utility functionality point of view. So, for instance, you can't really locate a table with chairs out there happily. And so, anyway, we advanced several feet forward to achieve, at least under the 2 bays that exist at that first level, which make up a fairly nice room size, and all the dimensions are on there, so that you could have a table with chairs. And anyway, that was
okay.
in
Rendering is very
in the range for that matter.
And I apologize for not having understood it before.
And then just to further, it's kind of a nasty roof. It's not the greatest looking elevation. It's got windows all over the place and a sliding door. And the hope was that this intervention of a 2-level sort of porch, or I should say porch and pergola above, would effectively sort of screen that or resolve that, if you will, in a proportion, repetitive bay, organized way.
I just noticed one thing that would have to change regardless of what happens is that the rim of the new outer edge of the porch, especially the second floor, because there's no stair, is shown as being flush with the side of the front wall where the Juliet balcony would go. That it really has to be pulled back just enough to give you a shadow line, 6 inches or something like that, coming in flush like that.
It does not read that way. It really is not out to the face, I don't think.
Okay, well, the rendering, though, looks like you have it right
There's
next to the
rendering,
siding.
we can follow up to help out on that.
But so we have to move this case one way or another here, folks, and I'm hearing a lot of different opinions on stuff.
We make a proposal, and should start by saying that this puts a burden on the chairman, which is, wonder, Mr. Chair, if you would be willing to review this stuff, possibly take an actual look at the property, and be willing to report back to us, and then we could continue the case and have them come back and get with a report from you.
I'd be willing to do that, but what would I'm not clear. What would my report? Because I'm not going to design it. I mean, it's already designed, but opinions. I mean, if you're standing there, you have a sense of what visibility matters more than others. And I actually went by today, and that's how I came to the conclusion that the view of the side of that back thing feels much more secondary than it looks like in the pictures here.
Well, I think the plan is to expand those by whatever, 3 feet or something. So they are more recessed now than they would be. But I think your point about making sure that it's tucked in behind the front mass is important. There's an overhead view on page 19.
Just looking at that.
And it does look there that it's stepped back, but the rendering does make it appear that it's flush.
It's actually shown 2 different ways. I think that needs to be reviewed. The roof plan shows it step back a foot or 2. And the second floor, they're flush.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, it's been just about 45 minutes or so that we've been talking on this case, and it seems like that there's no real consensus amongst the board, and it sounds like that there are some things that the applicant might need to clean up in their plans. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. Right.
And
well, the depth issue, yes.
Right. So the depth issue, et cetera. And I might recommend that it sounds like that the board is having difficulty coming to a decision this evening, that perhaps it might be best to discuss with the applicant and have a continuance to the next meeting, which would be the June meeting, and give them some direction as to some of the changes you might like to see, so that they have clear guidance going forward. We do have also 6 other cases to get through tonight.
Yeah. I think if that works, that'd be a good idea. I mean, I can tell you I would vote against the Juliet balcony as it now stands, and there are things that I would not support. So I think you're better off continuing and discussing some of this more, leaving the window open. Applicant, how does that work for you?
Jeff and Claire, I don't want to speak for you, please.
Yeah, no, that's fine for us. I guess in terms of giving us guidance, do you have any, I'm not sure how that works. Would we speak to some of you outside of this meeting, or how do we make things better, I guess? I
think it would be a meeting with staff with some direction from tonight. I would like to see some options on that upper Juliet balcony. I guess more precedent, because I'm just not sold that it would look okay there. I understand you, I don't want to squelch your thirst to do that, but it just seems out of character. I would like to get rid of that center window on the first floor that's being proposed and the side elevation of the front mass. Like,
I think that the triple window on the porch is also problematic. I think they should just be both two windows. And I have a really hard time with the Juliet balcony, just the change of that window, because it really stands out like a sore thumb with the front windows and the front gables, because they're taken as a piece. And then the pergola, I can't see that being a good idea. And I'm not clear as to why we have the multi-paned, what's shown as for the Juliet balcony door or the porch doors on the second floor or the first floor, why they're multi-paned when everything in the building is 2/2. But anyway, just paring it down and keeping things simple.
So for staff who wants to, JTA is just right down the hill from you guys, Gilman Square. And we have coffee and beer.
okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I captured all of those comments, and I mean, I've heard them throughout from members of the commission. So I understand that those are the things that you want to see the applicant work with. And then you would need to, with agreement with the applicant, continue this to the next meeting would be the June 21st meeting. And then in the next week or so, we can set up a video meeting with the applicant.
So how do we work this? Is the applicant amenable to the continuation as outlined by staff just now?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
In that case, I would entertain a motion to continue this case to the next hearing.
I move that we continue
To the next meeting.
And I'll second what Mr. Falvey said.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm sorry, I need to back up a little bit. The next meeting is technically next week, which is your regular May meeting, but this cannot be continued to that. So you need to actually continue it to the June 21st meeting date.
Okay.
A motion to continue the June 21st meeting.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you, folks. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Next case, I'm gonna make it lost ground. We have HBC ALT 2022.21, 78 Sycamore Street. Applicant is Daniel Macheras. I'm reading that. Applicant seeks a certificate of appropriateness to alter an LHT property by installing tracking lines for a ductless split system on the right elevation. Is there an applicant here for this case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Daniel Macheras is here. If he could be unmuted.
Daniel, you are unmuted.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So my name is Daniel Macheras. I purchased the property at 78 Sycamore Street in December of 2021. And upon moving in, one of the first things that I had done was an energy audit performed on the property. And one of the recommendations that came out of that was to replace the woefully inefficient electric baseboard heating system with a ductless mini split system. So that'll also, provide the benefit of cooling in the summer as well. So the issue in front of the commission today is the tracking that would be present on the side of the house that would be visible from the road, approximately 20 linear feet and 12 vertical feet to house the electrical and condenser lines. So happy to answer any questions that you may have about that.
And I see you have a drawing on page 3 that shows, it indicates where that is.
Correct.
Photo.
And that's on the right side of the house when you're looking at it from the street.
The view from the back corner, looking towards the street.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I got an audio drop out there.
Oh, I'm just looking at the photo on page 3 with the yellow lines drawn.
Yep.
And is that a view of the back corner looking towards the street?
Yeah, that's correct. The photo was taken from the rear of the house.
Okay, on the right. Okay, I see what you're saying. So that would be the right side seen from the back. And is that the only place we'd see one of these lines?
That is correct.
Okay. And you're proposing to use the covers that on that same page, the brown, that aluminum, PVC?
These are PVC, and yes, that is what we would be using, and they can be painted to match the house if the color is not deemed appropriate.
Oh, I just jumped the gun. Any members of the public who want to speak about this case?
Any members of the public who'd like to speak, please raise your hand.
I have Ron Cavallo unmuted.
Yeah, Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville. I want to confirm that this is the Tufts house. Am I correct?
It is. Yes, you are correct.
I have to say I'm in opposition to the proposal. This is a magnificent, historical, important house, and I understand the need and I understand the inefficiencies, and I'm all about efficiencies in terms of utilities. I've made that clear, especially with regard to windows, et cetera, and the inability to find workers to restore these old windows. But I consider the tracking to be a blemish on this house. And I think that unfortunately and I'm all for saving money, I'm all for the economics, and my concern in the past over some of the decisions that this commission has made do not look at economics, but in this case, this is one situation where I feel this house really needs to be maintained as pristine as possible. There are ways, and unfortunately more expensive ways, to put in, I'm very familiar with mini duct systems. I've installed many of them, and there are more expensive installation methods that are would be essentially invisible. Again, they involved altering the interior of the structure, and I realize the structure is a really old structure. It looks like it's from the 1680s or early 1700s. And, again, being really cautious of the economics, I think this is one situation where it's worth spending more money and maintaining the pristine character of the structure.
Thank you, Ron. Any other members of the public want to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see any other hands. You may close the public portion if you so desire.
I will close the public portion of the hearing of the case. Yeah, you have I believe, the oldest house in Somerville.
Indeed, we do.
That's quite the thing. And I see Mr. Cavallo's point about that. I would also note that this is very minimally visible. I mean, you would see it viewed obliquely from down the right alley there, one stretch, but I don't know what the other options are for running this in a way. Are there other options that you've looked at for routing this particular unit that would take it out?
There are. I discussed with my contractor whether we could run the unit through the interior, but due to the post and beam structure, we cannot.
Okay. So you'd have to pass through one of the posts or, yeah, so you're looking to place a unit inside between the second and third windows, I take it. That's where the top of that yellow line goes.
Correct.
Who else has thoughts on this?
So I think where this is not something that would permanently alter the structure in any way. You know, it could be removed and repaired relatively easily. Also, the structure is set back from the street quite a bit. And then this line that we're talking about is set quite far back on the side of the house. So I do not have concern about this proposal. I think it is a good solution.
I agree with Vice Chair Kelly. I feel as though due to the angle of where this is placed on the house or the view from the front, it would be minimally noticeable, especially if it's placed down around the bottom. Looks like there's a drip cap in the house. If it's placed right above the drip cap and it's painted is the same color, it even looks as though that the plastic that they have there is very closely approximate to the color of the house. I think it will be minimally noticeable and a much easier way to get access to that space in there. I think it's a very reasonable and a clean solution. I've seen this piping all over the front of houses and done, I think, in manners that detracts from the view of the house. I don't think this will be noticeable by 99.9% of the people passing by.
Yeah, I have to say, I would agree with that. I'm amused that I'm taking an opposite opinion on this than our frequent contributor, Mr. Cavallo. But this is an entirely reversible addition to the side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard to get less visible than that. I mean, it's the horizontal member is sort of in line with the water table there and the drip. It could be painted to match the siding exactly. So, and it supports mini splits, which, you know, generally good for energy. So I would be okay with it, as long as it could be finished by a painting to match the siding. Any other thoughts?
Let me just ask staff whether, and as a general matter, we don't have say about things like painting. Do we run into any problems here?
You are correct, Mr. Bauer. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, through you. You are correct that you don't have any purview over paint color. You do have purview over the use of a material such as a paint or a stain.
Okay.
But it does seem from what the applicant is proposing that he is quite interested in ensuring that there is as much of a match as possible to the color of the house at this time.
I think then I also I think I'm there. I did want to ask, and I guess I should have done it during public comment. Mr. Cavallo said there were ways to do this that, although they are more expensive, would be better. And I'm wondering whether we ought to inquire a bit about what those methods might be before we approve this.
I thought that was responded to or answered by the applicant in the explanation that he had discussed alternatives with his contractor, who explained that.
Right. He said he could not run stuff through the inside because of the post and beam structure, but I don't know what it was that Mr. Cavallo had in mind, and therefore, if what he was thinking was let's just run it on the inside, then it feels like we have the answer. Be a better way. It's hard to know what to make out of it.
Yeah.
I can tell you from the past when I've worked on houses of this age that yes, there are posts and beams embedded in those walls. And I once saw a baseboard radiation system that destroyed the integrity of that. They just cut through these posts and beams to run pipes. It was kind of sad.
Right, and I would agree that that would not be an alternative that I would favor.
Yeah, I just don't think, in this case, this particular installation warrants heroics to avoid seeing that little stretch of vertical pipe there.
No, it is totally reversible, and I think provided that it's conditioned on being painted to match the siding, whether that continues to be the brown or if that's changed at some point, so long as it matches, I think it's fine.
And I guess that we were saying that we can't condition that it be painted, or is that us splitting hairs?
No,
We've been
I-
told by the
My
applicant.
understanding is that we can condition on it being painted. We can't just say, well, we want this house to be painted white and we want you to paint this white along with it. But we can say, we want it painted whatever the paint color of the house is.
So whether they want it to be pink or white or black or whatever, they choose the color. It just needs to match whatever the chosen color is.
Sure.
And
And
Mr. Chairman,
that's
if
my
I may.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may, yes, if you were just to say that it's that the conduits be either wrapped or painted to match the color of the house, then I think you'll be fine.
In that case, I would entertain a motion that we approve this proposal with the condition that it be painted to match the color of the house.
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
So since
Whatever.
Vice Chair Kelly made the motion, I will second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Mr. Bingham?
I'm abstaining.
And I vote yes. That's 4 yes, 1 abstention. Thank you. Congratulations on owning the oldest house. Well, it's a beautiful place. Moving along, we're now up to the determinations of historic significance. And the first case in that category is HPC.DMO 2022.09, 57 Troll Street. The applicant is Rich Ducott. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. Owners Tim Buntel and Cynthia Graber. The application seeks to demolish a principal structure constructed a minimum of 75 years ago. Do we have an applicant here for this proposal?
Yes, Tim Buntel has his hand raised. If he could be unmuted, please.
Tim, you're unmuted. You're self-muted, though. You'll need to unmute you on your own end to speak.
Very good, thank you. Just checking. Great. Yeah, so we have a couple of comments. Are we able to share our screen and have some pictures that we can share while I give some brief introductory comments? Not sure if that's technically possible.
Yes, I would just say if you're looking to go into depth about what you propose to do, that isn't necessarily a factor at this stage of things.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we understand. We're not going to mention anything about the proposal in the future. We really want to focus this evening just on the property itself.
Okay, fair enough.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I can do is I can make him a, let's see. Okay, Tim, I've raised you to a panelist, and let's see if you can share your screen. I will let you know, though, that after your hearing is over, we have to demote you, and then that kicks you out of the meeting. So you'd have to sign back in again if you wanted to hear the rest of the meeting.
Okay. Let me just one moment to do this. All right, it looks like there's some permission issues on the GoToWebinar. So let's skip it, that's fine. I appreciate the the attempt, but we'll stick to verbal comments here. That's all right.
Were they
right,
items that were in the report originally, or were these things in addition to the report that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, we had a little bit more detailed photographs, since the original submission are just the limited 4-side elevations. So we had some additional photos, but allow me to just make some brief comments, and I'd be happy to struggle through the technology a bit more if that would help. We'll get to that point if it's helpful for everyone on the board. Okay, great. Well, then, just briefly then, Mr. Chairman, members of the board staff, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. I'm Tim Buntel. I'm here with my wife, Cynthia Graber. Mr. Chairman, through you, I'd like to present just our perspective on this application briefly. We've been residents of Somerville for more than a decade. We purchased this property in 2018 and really plan on creating a home here for ourselves, where we're going to remain for the rest of our lives, we hope. And so since tonight is about the current structure, I'll focus my remarks there. We're both history buffs. We took the Winter Hill walking tour with Ed Gordon last fall from the Historic Commission to learn about our neighborhood and the architecture, from the row of residences over on Henderson to the mansard roof, Victorians behind us here on Glenwood. And if we had a home with that sort of character, we'd be thrilled. But Troll was actually passed over on that tour because the street was laid out much later. And the guide literally told us on the tour that there were, quote, not any interesting buildings here on Troll. We had been told by the previous owner that the house was built around 1920. So you can imagine we were pretty surprised when we read the report that referenced that stylistic analysis from the 80s. That speculated the construction was much earlier. But, certainly as you'd walk down Troll, this would probably be the last house you'd likely to call architecturally significant. You certainly wouldn't say that on a close inspection of it. The house has really been extensively altered, particularly in the second half of the 20th century. So as you can see, all of the siding has been replaced with aluminum, all the windows have been replaced. The enclosed porch with the entry, the railings, the doors, all of that is mid to late 20th century. There's the chain link fence and the swing chain link gate, extensive asphalt paving. The protruding structure that you saw on the side of the second floor is actually an amateur addition that our building inspector said was added. It's a bathroom that was added in the 50s. And he said that there were some structural problems there. As you can see, there's no really visible original exterior architectural details like decorative moldings. There's no additional historic structures like barns or outbuildings on the property. And, as you can see, the exterior has been kind of distorted on multiple sides by those 20th century additions, the enclosures, the modern materials. And then finally, the house isn't part of a group of similar buildings on the street. The surrounding houses here on Troll Street are a mix of single, multifamily structures, all from different periods in quite different styles. What you don't see there too is that there's no interior details that remain as well. The flooring is not original. The kitchen's 20th century. There's a drop ceiling throughout. Honestly, when we started this project, had hoped to be able to preserve some of the history of the original structure and thereby our city by incorporating literally anything from the current house into a new one. But after walking through and talking with our architect and builders, we've literally found nothing that should or even honestly could be reused. So we hope that you'll agree and determine, that this structure is not historically significant. We thank you for your time and welcome any questions that you might have for us.
Thank you. Then let's move on to the public comment portion of this. Anybody, members of the public? I should, before we do that, I think we've received, Sarah, you can correct me, three letters of support from neighbors?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be unmuted.
We have Ron Cavallo, if you could be unmuted, please.
Ron, you are unmuted.
Roncavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville. I support the demolition of this structure for a number of reasons. I consider it marginal. I consider it a benefit to the city economically and architecturally to have the structure removed. There's very little that is of any architectural significance. This structure is pretty much indicative of where Somerville was in the 50s and 60s, where everything was drop ceilings and paneling and aluminum siding and cheap windows. And I am very concerned about the economics of the city. As the owner of a number of properties in the last year, my assessments and taxes have gone up over $50,000 on just 3 properties. And having spoken to the assessors, they are in dire need of additional revenue. And I see this city as on a collision course with an infrastructure that is literally falling apart. And we need new buildings. We need new structures. We need additional revenue. And this is one small example of where there could be a significant increase in tax revenue and I believe an improvement to the neighborhood and to the city. It's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Ron.
Next we have Luke Schuster. He could be unmuted, please.
Luke, you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. Luke Schuster, live directly across the street with my wife and 2 kids at 60 Charles Street, and just want to unequivocally support this project. Tim and Cynthia are great neighbors who want to improve our neighborhood, and we support improving the neighborhood. It seems like really simple, and this is the first time I've ever joined a meeting like this, so I have just no idea. I'm sure there's a million reasons for behind each step in the process, but we've lived in Somerville for a little over 5 years now, and I just hear so many anecdotes of how hard it is to do things that improve the neighborhoods we live in, that it's just becoming quite frustrating. So I'm directing this at nobody in particular, but just sort of the general forces that be. As a new person who joins a meeting like this, all I can say is that it just feels like something isn't working right when folks want to, take an older home and make it nicer. And I hope this just can move quickly because, just like Tim and Cynthia, we hope to raise our kids here, be here for a very long time. And if word continues to get out that it's just so hard to sort of do anything, it becomes a pretty frustrating dynamic. So let's hope that's not the case on this project.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Thomas Halls, if he could be unmuted, please.
Thomas Halls, you are unmuted on our end. I believe you need to unmute on your side.
Thomas, can you unmute yourself on your side? You are unmuted on ours. Mr. Chairman, it does not seem like Thomas is able to unmute himself, or perhaps he has stepped away. Give it a couple more seconds here.
Is there someone else after?
Okay, I don't think that he is able to successfully unmute himself. That is the last of the raised hands that I see, Mr. Chairman. And it is up to you to close the public hearing or not.
I would, yeah, let's close it and keep waiting.
Okay.
I don't know if he sent a letter in any way that I'm not sure. I don't remember the names. All right, so Commission, first thoughts on this?
Mr. Chairman, let me just note there are at least 1 or 2 other public comments that were submitted by email that we should make sure get included in the record?
Yes, I remember 3 that came across my folder. They're all in support.
There's
Demolition.
one from Josh Reynolds. I don't think we've heard from them. There's one from Luke Schuster from whom we've heard. There's one from TL Taylor, and there's one from Dominic Sirocco. If we could just make sure those are all included in the record. I'm not sure we need to read them out now.
No.
But they certainly should be included in the record.
Ms. White, they do not need to be read now because they are part of the record. I'll receive them, correct?
They are correct. They are part of the record, Mr. Chairman, through you. They are part of the record, and you have noted their names and their position on each, and they will remain part of the case file as well.
Thank you. So I'll start. You know, the roof line is cute and the little returns are cute, but there's nothing there. Sadly, there's nothing there. It's all been stripped away and lost to time. So yeah, I don't see enough of historic merit, architectural merit to save this from demolition.
Sure, Kelly. Yeah, I even walked down the street today, and I mean, I think you'd agree. I'm usually very deferential to, even in cases where there's almost no historic integrity left outside of the massing of respecting that massing when it reflects the general character of the neighborhood or history, you know, historical progression of the neighborhood. This house does not really. I mean, it is a gable facing the street, as are all the other gables, but it kind of stops there. It's interesting that it was moved there, but it doesn't really, there's so much unknown about that. So that lack of a connection to repeating similarly aged buildings around it, and the complete lack of integrity other than just the overall gable shape makes me not inclined to find this one significant. Anybody else have thoughts?
I must say I'm feeling somewhat torn. On the one hand, I agree with many of the comments that there's not a lot of detail left on it. On the other hand, the basic envelope is intact. We can read the building and see what it is like. And it's a building now that's some 200 years old. And we have determined buildings with no more special qualities than that as being significant. So I hear the owner and the neighbors about that there's not enough here to save and that there are good projects in the works. But it seems to me that that there is enough here to say that this building is significant. That doesn't answer the question about what conclusion I would reach about whether it's preferably preserved. But at the significant stage, I'm leaning towards saying that it's significant.
It's interesting, Mr. Bauer. You know that I'm loath to give up on houses.
I do indeed.
But there is something about the alteration of the fenestration, that funny 1950s bathroom addition that's sort of a little wart or tumor on the side, and then even the kind of little entry mudroomy porch thing, so that the form and massing have been kind of jiggered, and the fenestration's funny, and yeah, it just, like, it really, I'm having a hard time seeing enough there to say it should be saved.
That's kind of my, if this had been in its original location and had its original foundation, or if it were in an area where that was the building type of that time period at that location.
Yeah.
And I'm highly deferential to that sort of thing, but to me, it's not really speaking to any of that anymore. The foundation looks newer. There's no rhythm. There's no, I mean, we don't even know exactly when it was built. The original report thought it was early 19th century, which would make it 200 years. But we don't know. But yeah, I totally hear your point, Mr. Bauer, too, that we have a history of also of making a building like this, thinking of it as significant, even if it's not ultimately perfectly preserved. But I'm leaning towards not significance. About Mr. Bingham.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I tend to agree because it's lost all its character over the years. And, you know, I think that when we look at these structures, to be fair, it is an interesting old structure. Its form you could be reverted back to its original if you really wanted to put a lot of effort into it. But I don't see it. I don't particularly think that we need to keep everything in a time warp, which is what this is. This is an old building which has been successively modified unprofessionally by the looks of it, to a large extent, in an awful way over a long period of time. And, you know, I think it's just an insignificant building in the city. It's not even associated with anybody of note. Sure, it was moved there, but we don't know how old it is. We know that according to the records that 1884 is when Troll Street came into being. So it predates that probably, but we don't even know that because it was shifted there after Troll Street came into being. So I'm suggesting it's probably somewhere around about the 1840s, 1850s, but no older than that, which wouldn't put it 200 years, it'd put it 160 years, 170 years maybe. But I don't see it as having any redeeming architectural benefits to the city, nor do I see it as being associated with any person or persons or activity that fits within our bailiwick.
How about you, Mr. Falvey? Any thoughts?
I agree with the point of view that it is non-significant. I think its best days are behind the building. Time to move.
Okay. Well, I think we can. Oh, yeah. Yes.
I was going to make a motion that we take a vote as to whether this property is, to find this property historically significant. A yes vote would say yes, it is historically significant. A no vote would say it is not.
I will second that motion.
In favor of the vote as described by Vice Chair Kelly, say yes or aye. Aye.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm in favor of voting. I thought you were
Yeah,
asking if
The vote is to declare it historically significant. So if you don't,
I'm sorry, that was my mistake.
I got tripped up too. So all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Okay, we have a yes from Mr. Bauer. All opposed, say no.
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 And we'll do a roll call. Mr. Falvey.
No.
Vice Chair Kelly,
No.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
No.
and I vote no. And then I believe we need to adopt findings, which would be fairly simple, that we found that it lacks, not importantly associated with the architectural. I don't know to what extent we need to crib the language from the findings portion of the staff report. If we just say there's no lacks historic adequate integrity, it's not supportly associated with a architectural style or person.
Does not contribute to the streetscape.
To the streetscape. Yeah, I would use those three. And want to add to that or subtract? Okay, well then take a motion that we approve the findings as we just described.
So moved.
Second?
Second the motion.
Okay, all in favor of approving the findings, say yes.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay from Mr. Bauer. Roll call, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer.
No.
Oh, I just went, and Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Okay. For all these years, we still get the voting process for these demo delays hung up. Thank you, applicants. You're free to go.
Good luck with your project.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next case, HPC DMO 2022.103 Prescott Street. Applicant is Damien and Penny Mangino. The applicant seeks to demolish a principal structure constructed a minimum of 75 years ago. We have an applicant here for this case.
We do, Mr. Chairman. Damien Mangino is here. If you could be unmuted, please.
Damien, you're still muted on your side.
Hey,
There you
folks,
go.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, committee, for taking the time. I will do my best to try to be brief. So this is a bittersweet project for me, okay? My family's legacy on this street goes back nearly 65 years. What I mean by that is my parents purchased this building in 1979. And over the years, my father ran his business operation, a woodworking shop, and, you know, made the American dream come true for him and our family. He petitioned me 20 years, more than 20 years ago, to purchase the adjacent property next door, which was also a vacant lot. And I put up our current home. My wife and I, Penny Mangino, we have lived on Prescott Street since the year 2001. We represent both old and new Somerville. I'm born and raised in Davis Square, and now I live here. My wife was born in Southern California, so you know we've seen all the changes over the last 20 plus years. My dad, he recently turned 81, and I still have to, believe it or not, keep him off of the roof of this building to try to stop the leaking. It's nerve-wracking, to say the least. So we have kept this property in the family. During COVID, we ran out of walls and space in our current home, as everybody can attest to. We have two growing boys who go to Somerville Public Schools. I work out of the house 3 days a week, and it literally was the walls were closing in. So we have, when it came time to decide what to do with the property, I said, Dad, I'll double down. I'll put everything I have to, keeping the property and maintaining it for our family's legacy to preserve us for the next 20 years or more, and for my kids. I almost feel like, Doc Moonlight Graham in The Field of Dreams, where he said he was born in Chisholm, Minnesota. He was born there, he'll live there, and he'll die here. And I think, much to my wife's chagrin, who was born in Southern California, she might not like that idea, years from now. But for now, this is what we need to do. This is a legacy project for us. We have a significant support from 10 registered voters. We have a handful, half a dozen letters or more in support of this project. We've been responsible neighbors and residents of this area. Outside my door, there's significant city investment with the Summer Street Spring Hill infrastructure program. So this is, Prescott will be, will change aesthetically. This whole corner of Quincy will much for the better with the traffic calming measures and the appearance, and it'll be a gateway to the Central Hill campus and City Hall. I don't think that people want to see a cinder block building anymore. I think that the time has come. We have a proposal to build a 2-family net zero passive home structure with a very reputable firm who has a history or a track record of putting up really nice homes, not a lot of the cookie cutter stuff that we're accustomed to seeing. I'm committed to building a custom quality 2-family home that will inspire anyone really who walks by. Visually, it'll be architecturally pleasing in its massing and it's the gable. The street contains a number of 2- and 3-family structures that have gabled roofs, and I just don't think that this building has its time has come, and I think that I hope you would vote favorably in that proposal for us, in supporting our proposal. Sorry. Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak about this case?
Mr. Chairman, I see Ron Cavallo. If he could be unmuted, please.
Ron, you are unmuted.
Yeah, Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville. My relation, since the applicant talked about the family history, which I really appreciated hearing, my family history started in 1894 in the city of Somerville. That's 128 years. And I'm a significant property owner. The applicant has said all the magic words as far as I'm concerned. The fact that this is a block structure of limited architectural value, that he wants to build a net zero building, a net zero building. That is so important to me. If this city is going to maintain the 2050 goal, and it won't, more of this needs to take place. Building has no value. I fully support its demolition. This city needs revenue. This city is on a collision course. We have only $20 million in cash reserves. We have an infrastructure that's falling apart. We have to contemplate that for a few minutes and think about the importance of it. I fully support the demolition of this building, and I fully support the program that this family has for this site. I realize that is not for this commission, the actual structure, but it needs to be taken into consideration if the city is to act in a unified manner, which it doesn't. There are commissions that are in opposing positions all the time, and previous comments about how difficult it is to develop in this city are valid, which is why many developers, the majority of the small developers, have left. I fully support this proposal. I fully support proposals that generate revenue for this city, which this city desperately needs. End of my comments.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see any other hands raised. You may close the public portion of the hearing if you so choose.
I will close the public comment portion of this case, the hearing for this case. Who wants to go first here?
Well, I can, if you like. I looked at this structure, and quite frankly, I can't see any architectural merit in it that's going to be rewarding to the city of Somerville in keeping it. So my sense is that it would not be a significant structure. It's a concrete block with a brick facing on it with metal windows, and has no important association with anybody in the city or any activity in the city of historical significance, nor does it contribute to any consistency of the streetscape. So in my opinion, this is a building that doesn't fit with the definition of being significant.
I
Thank you, Mr.
100%
Bingham.
concur with Mr. Bingham.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. I agree. There's nothing. I'm a real softie when it comes to these old industrial buildings. Doesn't do it for me. It looks like the brick work has been replaced in the street side, or there's really no detailing merit there. So I would concur.
I'm on board too.
Thank you, committee. I really appreciate that.
Well, we're ready to vote.
So I move that we vote to find the property historically significant. A yes vote would mean it's significant. A no vote would mean it is not. So.
For a second.
I'll second that.
Second.
Got there first. All in favor of Robin's motion, or Vice Chair Kelly's motion, say aye. All opposed, say no.
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 And we'll do the roll call. Brian, Mr. Falvey.
No.
Vice Chair Kelly.
No.
Mr. Bauer.
No.
Mr. Bingham.
No.
And I vote no as well. And then we need to adopt findings, and I would just state that it lacks, it's not importantly associated with the historical style or time or person, it lacks integrity. It's of a building of its time period.
Does not contribute to the streetscape.
Anything else?
I move that we vote to adopt those, or adopt those findings.
I second that.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'll do a roll call. Mr. Falvey.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Bauer.
Yes.
And Mr. Bingham.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So there you have it. Look forward to seeing your project. I live a block or two away, so I'll be seeing it.
Thank you so much. It's much appreciated.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, the next case is a determination of significance as well. It's HPC DMO 2022.11, which is 9 Union Square. The applicant is Hamilton Construction Management, represented by Michael Sambucetti. I got that right. The applicant seeks to demolish a principal structure constructed in minimal 75 years ago. We have an applicant here for this project?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Michael Sambucetti is here. If he could be unmuted, please.
Michael, you're unmuted on our side.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
I first want to thank the committee and all the residents for hearing us tonight. Not terribly much more to add than we've put in the report. I did want to stress, of course, that this is for the rear portion. The rear, it looks like to be an addition only, so it's consisting of the 4 garage bays. Building, I am not aware of the age, but it's a CMU block construction with a concrete slab roof. I am not aware of any architectural significance to the building. It does not appear to me, at least, to have any significant or discernible style apart from mid, 20th century commercial. Again, not terribly much more to add to that. It has been deemed structurally insecure. It is now a vacant structure. The tenant has relocated. yeah, not much more to add other than it's, in our opinion, time to come down. So I'll turn it over to the committee at this point. Thank you.
Are there members of the public who'd like to speak about this case?
Mr. Chairman, Ron Cavallo's hand is raised. If he could be unmuted, please.
Ron, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street. Essentially, everything that I said with regard to 3 Prescott applies. I've looked at all these properties, which is a significant time commitment because I, want to pay attention to this. And I fully support the demolition of these garages. I think it is a benefit to the city. Everything I said with regard to the economics of the city, restraints on development, the need for increased revenue, the need to bring structures into a more current energy efficiency apply, in my opinion, to this site. And I think it's a disservice to the city to deny the applicant. That's the end of my comments.
And Mr. Chairman, I do not see any other hands raised. You may close the public comment portion if you choose.
I do close the public comment portion of this case, the hearing. I don't remember seeing any letters on this, so who has thoughts on this?
Well, I think, I can kick this off if you like, but I don't see very much architectural merit in this either. The streetscape is what the streetscape is. Union Square, this area is undergoing a lot of redevelopment at this point in time. This structure has no redeeming architectural quality as far as I can see, and adds nothing to the city as it is. And it's not associated with any people or activities of note, as we must follow according to the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior and the National Park Service. So I don't see this as being significant at all.
Once again, I agree completely with Mr. Bingham. This is
Gosh.
This is as devoid of actual design or architecture as the structure could have. So yeah, I don't see anything there that needs to be salvaged.
I agree.
I agree as well. We looked at this property when we're mapping out a potential historic district, and we're trying to figure out how to address buildings like this that were non-contributing. And I think the front facade, which actually is going to be retained, is all new, and the back is sort of a combination of things. So I would concur that this is not a significant structure. Anybody else?
Mr. Bauer, you seem quiet.
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add.
Right.
I move that we vote to find this structure historically significant.
Second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Oh, no, sorry.
Favor, say aye. Okay. Opposed, say no.
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 We'll do a roll call, starting with Mr. Falvey.
No.
Vice Chair Kelly.
No.
Mr. Bauer.
No.
Mr. Bingham.
No.
And I vote no as well. And for findings, I don't know. Vice Chair Kelly, do you want to take a stab at these? It's the same three.
Look at it. Yeah, so does not possess architectural or historic significance, not importantly associated with any, whatever our typical thing is.
Architectural style or
Architectural
person.
style or person or cultural movement or any of that does not contribute to the streetscape. Yeah,
That covers it.
all that.
It doesn't have adequate integrity to display those characters. Okay. All in favor of adopting the findings as presented by Vice Chair Kelly? Okay, aye.
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 Chair Falvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Mr. Bingham?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So there you have it. Okay, we have two cases left. They are both determinations of preferably preserved status. The first one, and they're both on White Street. The first is HPC.DMO 2022.1332 White Street. Applicant is SGL Development, Inc. The applicant seeks to demolish a principal structure constructed a minimum of 75 years ago. There an applicant here for this? We'll hear, even though there are two cases on White Street by the same applicant, we're going to hear them separately.
Yes, correct, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, through you. Yes, the representative for the applicant is here, Attorney Adam Dash. And I did want to make a note for not just the commission, but also for the audience as well, is this is for determination of preferably preserved, as is the next case, because in accordance with our demolition review ordinance, an applicant has the right to waive a determination of historic significance and thus concede that it is historically significant. So they automatically move on to the second step in the demolition review process. So with that, I will unmute Attorney Dash. Oh, sorry, I did that instead of my counterpart. Adam, you're unmuted, and there you go, off and running.
I am indeed. Thank you, Ms. White. You can all hear me, I presume. So
Yes.
Attorney Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville. I am here. I've got my client Adam Siegel, who's the principal of SGL Development. The applicant, Stanislav Maltsov, also was here from SGL. I'm going to take 32 White Street first, of course, but they're sort of intertwined, so it's a little hard to talk about one without talking about the other, but I will endeavor to do so. I do have some slides, Sarah, if you want to let me share, that would be good. In the meantime, applicant, as you know, as Sarah said, the applicant has waived the significance finding. We're here tonight on the question of whether the structure is preferably preserved. The applicant intends to demolish all the structures on the property, and this property abuts the property. There's a property there on the street. There's one in. Great.
Lost you.
Yeah.
We lost you.
Hold on. Have you now gained me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So the question is now, where's the little button to share the screen on this stupid GoToMeeting thing? Full screen mode. Make me presenter. I am present. Show my screen. Thank you. Okay. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Excellent. Great. All right. So I'm going to show you some pictures because it's really hard to talk about this without seeing the pictures. So next. All right. Can you see that map?
Yes.
All right. There's a little delay when I click to the next slide, but we'll work on that. So this is right in Porter Square. You can see here, if you see my cursor, this is the Porter Square parking lot. We're talking about White Street, which runs the Cambridge and Somerville line horizontally where the blue line is, and then takes a jog up Cambridge. In this dashed area are the properties in question. So we will here. So all the way on the right is the one we're talking about now, 32 White Street, the gray house. In between is a property that SGL is also purchasing, which is 40 White Street, which is a one-story commercial property. It is not 75 years old, so it is not subject to the demolition review, but that will also be demolished. To the left of it is this brown house, 44 White Street, which is the next one we will be discussing. Just to orient you, directly across the street from this is the Porter Square parking lot. So what you're going to see here, this is You can see, I'm going to show you over time how the structures have been significantly altered with parts added and subtracted. So you can see here, and some of this is in the staff report, but some of it's not. So what you've got, forget these numbers, because as the staff kindly stated, the numbers all got changed at some point. But number 29 here is actually 32 White Street, which is the house, and has a completely different floor plate than what we have currently. The middle, which is number 33 on here, is actually 40 White Street, which is that commercial building. 37 White Street is the 44 White Street today, which is, again, significantly different and is the one that we are going to be discussing next when we get to 44 White Street. So I'm going to show you some things that have changed over time. This on the left is the black and white 1946 photograph of 32 White Street, and on the right is a current picture of 32 White Street. And you can see how with 1 and 2, how these add-ons have been put onto the property, and that we take a look here. There's another side view of 1 and 2. You can really see where those were added on and the massing changed. You can see this sort of barge board up here at the top, which is pretty, but it's not unique, and it's a nice decorative piece, but doesn't change the fact that the massing and form of the house has dramatically changed over time. So it's no longer even the original house. You can see much better view here. How actually this number 2 addition is actually just totally dominates that facade of the property. And these little boards, decorative boards on the ridge there, don't really change that fact. So the staff report also corroborates a lot of these changes, but I think these photographs are actually quite helpful. I'm going to skip over some of the, I'm sorry, here's a little bit more rather. Again, showing some significant changes, some subtractions. You can see here, this area used to be here, and you can see on the right that it no longer is. So again, and then you can see also in these circles how bits of the barge board are missing. But you can see there's been quite on this little addition here, used to be here on the right and is currently no longer there. So this house has undergone quite a lot of change over time. We can again see here on the next picture, I don't know what year that is, but I would say that car looks 1970s-ish, or 1980s maybe. So you can see what the changes that have gone on as well. Some little, some not so little, and things have been added on and things have been popped off over time. You can see here there was some decorative bit on the top of the chimney that's no longer there. On the chimney on the right. These are other examples of barge boards in Somerville. It's not a particularly rare thing to get a decorative piece of wood cut and nailed to the up to the soffits like that. So I'm going to skip the next. I'm going to go to the summary and then I'm going to skip the next few slides. But so again, we've seen the floor plate reduced. We've seen a new addition to the front of the house that I showed you. That's actually there. The remodeled entry to the enclosed porch. Remodeled backside to remove a significant part of the floor plate. Actually, that big part I showed was taken away. And of course, final windows and entry doors installed, replacing whatever was there wooden before, and they removed the entry canopy and the chimney detail. This is 44, so I will get to that momentarily. I do want to again orient you here that we are in one of the areas in Porter Square right here, which is in that little purple enhance area. You can see in summer vision. Also note that this whole strip here has been just for, if you don't know, has been turned to MR4 for mixed use development. And you can see again here on the left is 32, in the middle is that commercial 40, and on the right is 44. And so this is intended, as I said, for mixed use development near transit stations like the Porter Square to go up to 4 stories. And Somerville needs more development like this in the MR zones, including White Street. And this being across the street from a shopping strip, and part of the predominantly commercial Porter Square is better suited as commercial or mixed use property here, rather than having an odd house or two, which have been significantly altered over time. And I'll show you how 44 has been as well. And they're sitting in the middle of this commercial area across from a massive shopping strip parking lot. What's left of the original house no longer fits the current context of Porter Square. And in fact, the structure's been so altered, it probably wouldn't even be eligible to be on the National Register at this point. So I would state, I'm going to stop sharing my screen until we go back to the other. I can figure out where the button is for that. Nevertheless, well, I don't guess I don't have to stop sharing my screen, but because we're going to be going back to it. But as such, we requested 32 White Street not be found preferably preserved. While we did admit significance because there is some little bits there, and we don't believe that it rises fully to that level of being preferably preserved, and that the new development that we're looking at here would be a much better fit for the neighborhood and be a much bigger boon to Somerville in terms of doing something more commercial, which would bring in more tax revenue linkage for affordable housing and such. So take any questions or any comments.
Good. Are there members of the public who'd like to speak about this case? Oh, wait, this is a public hearing, so I guess with the same process.
Correct. Ron Carvalho, could he be unmuted, please?
Ron is unmuted.
Yeah, Ron Cavallo, 70 Victoria Street, Somerville. It would be very easy for the commission to look at the Gothic rake boards in this building and think this is just the most wonderful thing that exists in the city, and forget the economic need and the importance of this site, the economic need and the significance of increased revenue. I support the demolition of this building, but I have a qualification, and that is that I'd like to see the rake boards removed and sent to a restoration materials supplier. But this building sits right on grade. It's been altered a gazillion times. This is a highly significant site, and it's in a location that has become very commercial. These buildings, and I'm including the others, the brick building, the block building, the building that will be addressed next. You know, again, you can get wrapped up in the Gothic rake boards, but these buildings, in my opinion, have limited architectural value, but more than that, they have enormous revenue value down. This site is a very important site. It's essentially a commercial neighborhood at this point, and the opportunity for the city is significant here. We need revenue. I've said it multiple times. The city is on a collision course. We have $20 million in cash reserves, and we have an infrastructure that is falling apart. We also have structures of limited value like this one that are no longer energy efficient. If this city is going to reach its 2050 goals, it means that marginal structures like this on important sites need to come down. Now, I said it before, 3 of my properties have been reassessed and my tax bill has gone up $40,000 on 3 buildings. I have to fight that in the court system because the assessor's office has denied over 2,000 applications for relief on assessments. They're just doing it across the board. Where's the money going to come from? Where's the thoughtfulness that's going to lead us towards the 2050 goals? Now, I like the Gothic detail on this house enough to ask that it be preserved and removed and given to a renovator supplier where that trim can have another life. And somebody will buy it and pay good for it, a significant amount of money for it. But I fully support the demolition of this building and the adjacent two. Now, I'm making a statement about the adjacent two because it's been a very long night and I've had a very long day, and I wanted to include my support for the demolition of the 2 adjacent buildings, of which I know quite well. I've seen everything that was listed tonight. This is an opportunity the city should not lose. It will provide a huge amount of revenue. These individual structures provide very, very little. Again, we're on a collision course and nobody talks about it. That's the end of my comments and the end of my evening. I wish everyone well, but I want to, before I leave, again, support the demolition of the adjacent 2 structures for all the reasons I've just stated. This is good economics. This is wisdom. This is thoughtfulness. This is good for the city. Forget about the Gothic details. Have it saved, have it have a second life. Let these buildings go. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you. Any other members of the public want to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I see no more raised hands. You may close the public comment portion.
I close the public comment portion of this case. All right, folks. Who has thoughts here?
I'll go. While I agree it's historically significant and there are details that are special, and I do think would be worth preserving, the property on the whole, I don't see as being preferably preserved. Though I do think that as Mr. Cavallo suggested, I think that if it's possible to save the rake boards to be used somewhere else or something, perhaps that would be a nice thing.
Yeah, I agree with Vice Chair Kelly. I know this area quite well because I live quite close by in West Somerville. And I've seen these structures on many times. And I don't see them as being compelling in adding to the streetscape there is kind of awful. There's no addition to it. It's kind of dysfunctional and discombobulated. And it's not associated with any persons of any influence or significance in the city. It doesn't contribute to the streetscape. It seems to me very little of its original massing and form left. It's been altered significantly over time. I see the barge boards as just being a fancy addition and not being of any really significant structural or architectural merit to it. Perhaps more in keeping with something up in the ski country than right next to a shopping centre in Porter Square. So I'm not seeing this as being significant. And I say that based on the guidelines that we have to work with from the National Park Service and the Secretary of the Interior, not on anything that's related whatsoever to any finances and financial issues that the city may or may not have. That's not in our purview. All we're looking at is the significance of this property to the city of Somerville and the people of Somerville. And I can't see that significance given the guidelines that we work with.
How about you, Mr. Bauer? Do you have thoughts?
I think I agree. This building strikes me as having enough integrity to be significant, but there's not enough there for it to be preferably preserved.
How about you, Ryan, Mr. Felby?
Yeah, I agree with the sentiments that have been expressed. Chair Parks, nothing further to add.
I move that we vote to find the property preferably preserved. A yes vote would preserve it, a no vote would not.
I second that.
Okay, we have a proposal by Vice Chair Kelly, seconded by Mr. Bauer. All in favor of determining this property to be preferably preserved, say aye. And I'm actually going to say yes to this one. All opposed?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Do a roll call. Mr. Falvey?
Nope.
Vice Chair Kelly?
No.
Mr. Bauer?
No.
Mr. Bingham?
No.
And I'll vote yes. And for the findings, who wants to propose? Maybe we should propose findings for this.
That the massing and form have changed over the years from the original design, that it lacks any historical fenestration of architectural significance to the city, that it is not consistent with any other structure in the streetscape, and it's not associated with any activity or persons of note of significance to the city, or some of them.
Thank you. Anyone want to add or change the findings? If not, we'll take a motion to adopt the findings.
So moved.
I'll second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? No. So roll call, Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and I vote no. Okay, well, there you go, Attorney Dash. And on with your next project, which is
Don't throw me
down the
off.
street. Yeah. So you're also here with, as you mentioned, the lost. Let me read it into the record here. Next case is HTC DMO 2022.14 44 White Street. The applicant is SGL Development, Inc. Applicant seeks to demolish a principal structure constructed a minimum of 75 years ago. If you wanted to carry on with your presentation, Mr. Dash.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I will try to skip some of the redundancy. But yes, Attorney Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street for the applicant, SGL Development, Inc. With me is Adam Siegel and Stanislav Matsov from the company SGL. This is 44 White Street. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of this is going to be similar because, of course, this is right by it. Oh goodness, hold on. Some reason it threw me off the view. Okay, there we go. So back to Porter Square, if you can see the map. Again, we just discussed 32 White Street on the right, commercial building, which is going to be demolished in the middle. On the left is Brown Building, 44 White Street. That is where we are going right now. So again, you can see here on the old Sanborn map that 44 White Street's floor plate has significantly changed. I will detail that momentarily. We'll skip 32 White Street slides. And here, if you can see the Brown Building, this is 44 White Street. And these areas that are all in red, I will show you have been altered. To be honest, I've walked by this building for years. I thought it was built in the 1970s because of the look of how it is, but it's because that's how it reads to me, but it is not, apparently. So if you look here at the old picture from 1870, that little white building is the building. You can see this roof line here, is this roof line here, and you can see that roof line there, is this roof line here, and it looks nothing like that building at all. Skylights and this entire bit on the back all added on to it, which completely obliterated that pond facing, I guess, facade there, that gable. So the multiple floor plate iterations with the latest being reduced to fit the commercial structure. So that's worth noting, I suppose, that actually, if you go back here, that the property was actually, this property where the 44 White Street is, was actually chopped for the construction of this commercial building here to the right. It used to have a much larger piece of property, which I suppose is where the pond is there in that photo. But again, renewed doors and entry doors, replacing historic wood doors and sashes. The skylights were installed, and whatever that siding happens to be is not the clapboard that was probably there. So again, you can see, as with 32 White Street, how much 44 White Street structure has been altered over time, both by addition and subtraction. Skylight, siding, floor plate changes, subdivision of the lot. The current appearance is nothing like that original form or massing of the house. Again, just for the record, it's in an enhancement zone under summer vision. It's in the MR4 zone in the new zoning for mixed use development. And that is the proposals to do commercial development on all three of these sites. So that is what I've got.
Thank you. Question, could you go back to that picture that you found from the Athenaeum? Can't speak.
I will find yes, I can, and I'll credit my client for that. That wasn't me who found it, but let me go.
Curious how, I was looking at that, like, how did you even divine that that was that building?
I can have Mr. Siegel, if you want to unmute Adam Siegel. I'm sure he can tell you where we got that from. Adam, you there? Yeah, there we go.
I am here. And Adam, if you want to go back to yes, this slide. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, cool.
Where that parking lot is currently, that you can kind of see the wheel stops in this image on the right. This is where this Pine, I think it was called the Pine Pond or something, was located. So this is, we found this image in a presentation to the Cambridge Historical Commission, and they had an image of this church as well that's currently still standing, but its steeple was removed and it's been, I believe, remodeled into residential units in Cambridge. And this was located by the, I believe the director of Cambridge Historical, Charlie Sullivan, had a note on this saying it was the same house.
I see nothing. I guess
so
if that
the gable on the left, in the rear of this photo, is similar to the gable on the left that you're viewing in the Boston Athenaeum picture, and then everything was added on behind it. And I think that small gable was popped up. And it was significantly renovated by the current owners as well.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry to linger on this. It's just it seems like a stretch, but I know that was a big estate there where Porter Square is.
There was a
garden.
large estate where the parking lot was, and where the current mall is, the Rand Estate.
Yeah, actually, there's a plaque there in the front of the parking lot that actually talks about the historical significance of the estate and how it was left, and the city of Cambridge assumed it and sold it for a shopping mall and parking lot.
Yeah, I've seen a picture of it from some of the old Facebook pictures. It was impressive, but I guess we need a grocery store too. So what's mystery here is that the eave line doesn't even line with the window in the same way.
I know.
Which makes me wonder why, and the ridge line doesn't line up the same way. So it's hard to, I almost wonder if it's just a wholly new building that they built.
It's not a photograph on the left, so who knows if artistic license was taken.
That's true.
You're right, Mr. Chair, whether it's actually was a different building in 1870, we don't know. Clearly it is.
Anyway, I won't belabor that. It was just a cool picture.
Yeah, it's just rare we get something that spot on in these cases. So,
Mr. Chairman, I do have to say that I think this is interesting, but it is a rendering, right? It's a painting, so there's a lot of artistic license that can be, taken. And as I look at the old maps, the pond is actually in a different location than right next to this house. I don't dispute that there's been tons of changes to this, but just to clarify, it's like I'm not seeing our maps lining up this way, but we can all agree to disagree on that for the evening, because I think that what's most important is the changes that have gone forward for the 44 White Street building. But I just wanted to make a clarification that this is actually the pond and a few other things are actually in different locations.
Okay. I need to open up the public comment. I sort of sidetracked us. Any members of the public want to speak about this?
Mr. Chairman, let's see, I have Thomas Halls, his hand is up. And Thomas, I wanted to mention your hand went up after the public comment portion was closed for the last case. So that is why we could not call on you afterwards. Once it's closed, it's closed. However, you have the opportunity to speak now about 44 White Street.
You were unmuted, Thomas.
Thomas, you need to unmute yourself on your side. Okay, Thomas, we're going to move on to one other commenter. We'll come back to you in a couple minutes. Let's see, if you could unmute, please, Ron Cavallo.
Ron, you are unmuted.
You know, Roncavallo, 70 Victoria Street, the etching of the house was very bucolic and great to see, but that's a world that we all know doesn't exist anymore. And my position is that this commission has to look at economics. Clearly, the structure that's there is, well, it's sort of like a 70s. I've always noted it as sort of a 70s hippie building. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's completely out of context. And the master plan here to combine the three structures and take them down is, I think, enormously important to the city. And I fully support the demolition of this structure, which has, I think, no architectural value. In fact, I've always considered it quite ugly. Not that being ugly is a reason to take it down, but I think it's significant to note that it is ugly. And but of greater importance is the value as a complete development site to the city. Again, I keep on coming back to the economic need, and you can say that's not in part of this commission's purview, but I say that it is. Because if one cares about this city, one cares about the economics of this city. I fully support the demolition of all three structures. That's it for me for the evening. It's been a long, but I think productive evening. I'm going to say good night.
Thank you. Did we successfully got the other commenter, or are we still waiting for them?
Thomas, we're going to try you one more time. You're self-muted. I don't think that that's going to be possible. So, Mr. Chairman, you may go ahead and close the public comment portion of the hearing.
Okay, we'll close the public comment portion.
One person put their hand up in the questions section with without raising their hand, that are indicating they have a comment.
All right.
I see. Okay, so Mary Kay Severino, you're unmuted, I believe, but you're muted on your end. There you go.
Yes. Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I raised my hand in the wrong spot. I was raising it somewhere. I am not sure if this is the correct moment to make a comment, because I am one of the owners of 46 White Street, which abuts this property, but I am also one of the owners of this property at 44 White Street, so I'm not sure if this is the moment that you would like me to comment.
You are a member of the public, so I think you can speak as a member of the public.
Okay. My name is Mary Kay Severino, and although I currently live in Woburn at 105 Montville Ave, I grew up in Somerville, in that house at 44 White Street. And my brother, Mark Severino, and I own 44 White Street via ETS Family Investments, which was named after my late father, Ed Thomas Severino, who spent his entire 81 years in Somerville, actually. And developing this property was really one of his lifelong dreams, which we're continuing for him through this project. My brother and I are also the owners of 46 White Street, which is not a part of this project, but abuts 44 White Street. And we are in support of this project as people who will continue to own right there on White Street in Somerville. And I'm speaking on behalf of my brother, Mark Severino, and my mother, Elaine Severino, who has lived at 44 White Street for 45 years, still resides there now, and is also in favor of this project. And I wanted to mention a couple pieces of information about 44 White Street, and actually some of it relates to some comments that Mr. Siegel made. He is right, or whoever mentioned that it seemed very 70s. They are correct. My parents completely redid the exterior and interior of the home. That paneling is from the late 70s. It is red cedar vertical siding, and so that would not be considered historical. And when they put that siding on in late 70s, early 80s, they removed some pink and green asphalt shingles. And at that point, they found that the original clapboard siding was rotted, destroyed, and irreparable. So that is not there. And the interior in the early 80s was entirely gutted and completely updated at that time too. So some find this house to be very 70s looking. It's definitely very 70s looking. This is of course a little bittersweet for us because it's the home that we grew up in, but we think that this is the right move for the neighborhood, for Porter Square, and for our family. And so we are speaking in favor of this. And as many have mentioned, this is right in the heart of the commercial area of Porter Square. And it's a little bit out of place as a single family home on that street, and certainly would align better with Summer Vision if it was changed into a mixed use property. So I really appreciate all of you being here this late. I know we're the last case, so I'll stop talking there, and thank you for hearing this and letting me speak.
Anybody else? No one's also showing up. Okay. In that case, I will close the public comment portion of this public hearing and take it up as a commission.
So I'll start. Aside from some of the, the steep gables, there's really very little here that I'm not even sure that I would have found it historically significant, given the number of alterations in its fenestration, the massing, all of that. So yeah, I don't see that it's then preferably preserved.
Thoughts there?
Well,
I agree.
I've always looked at this property as being somewhat of an anomaly in this area. I always actually thought it was in Cambridge. It's unlike anything else in Somerville, and obviously it was meant to be. I don't see, because of the radical changes that have taken place with it over time, I think it's lost any character that it had previously that would have been led to it being considered as significant for preferably preserved. Obviously, the last speaker, the lady who has grown up in this house, talked about its history, which I find interesting, and that it was in an area that was of some significance in relationship to Porter Square and the Dickinson estates. But it doesn't add anything to the streetscape at present. It has been, all its historic qualities that may have been there have been lost to posterity. And so I'm looking only at the rules that we can be guided by, regardless of all the financial considerations. And for Mr. Cavallo's benefit, I have already spoken previously to the former mayor on several occasions as a trained accountant and a person with 2 management degrees, that I could be of enormous help in finding money for the city, and could do it pro bono, but he unfortunately turned me down. I would have been delighted to have saved the city some money and helped. That was not to be. So I'm restricted now in only what I can do. And what I can do is I can say that I don't find this to be of such significance to the city or for posterity of the people of Somerville to be preferably preserved.
Thank you, Mr. Bingham. Thoughts?
Alan, we could use you at Gentle Giant if you want to come over and lend a hand that way.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm happily retired now, as you probably realize.
I'll give you a nice big cubicle. I agree with everything Alan said, and I thought he summarized it very succinctly and effectively.
I'd rather have a big paycheck than a cubicle, thanks.
All right.
What do you think, Ryan? Do you agree with what I said?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like I said, I support and agree with everything that Alan said, as well as Vice Chair Kelly. I agree with the sentiments.
I would add, since this has come up a lot, that this notion that economic benefit to the city kind of trumps historic value. I take exception to that as a reason to facilitate. I would never look at this and say this should be gone because we could make more money for the city out of getting rid of it, because you could apply that to really any place in the city. It's not, and sure, this is 50 feet from a T-stop as opposed to 350 feet or whatever. This particular, unlike the previous one, I think this one just lacks integrity. Enough integrity for me to consider it preferably preserved. I don't necessarily think that, well, clearly the days are numbered for these little houses on this side of the street. They add character to that street, and just the fact that someone has a different vision for that side of the street doesn't necessarily make something not preferably preserved if it tells part of the story, but I think this one is not really doing that. So I would go along with this one being not preferably preserved.
I'd like to add also, I thought it was really wonderful that the Severino family, their history there, and that the daughter was willing to call in and talk about that and share that. I mean, that's really it's just so amazing and wonderful to hear about what that property meant to the family and how it's been able to be extended onto different generations and what they did to that place. It's fun to hear that kind of stuff. I thought it was really special, and all that we do and all the things that we hear. There are moments like that that make this worth it.
Yeah, it's great.
Little things like the business next door that we're not hearing tonight, but that's been in business at that location as a print shop for over 100 years now, Fleming Printing.
Wow.
Yeah, they've been in that building. The front part's new, but the original part goes back quite a ways. That's part of the story there too.
Wow, that's great.
Kind of cool. And they just shut down, which is pretty sad, but anyway, we're not hearing that case. Okay, who else has Mr. Bauer? Any thoughts?
I agree with the sentiments that have been given so far, that it's not preferably preserved. I also want to express my appreciation for the candor of the applicant, who has brought us in these wonderful old pictures of Porter Square from 150 years ago that could tempt us to make it think that it is preferably preserved. And I appreciate your candor and telling us this is part of the history. Take it as it is.
I move that we vote to find this property or to determine this property preferably preserved.
Second that.
All in favor of declaring 44 White Street preferably preserved, please say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
No.
Roll call, Mr. Falvey.
No.
Vice Chair Kelly.
No.
Mr. Bauer.
No.
Mr. Bingham.
No.
And I vote no as well. We need to adopt findings. I would suggest that Vice Chair Kelly repeat the findings from the previous, which I would agree with this time?
The property lacks sufficient association with any notable architectural style, lacks integrity of architectural style, is not associated with any individual or cultural movement of significance, does not contribute to the streetscape. What else?
Not associated with any significant activity for people of the city of Somerville. With all due respect to the family that lived there,
Yes, yeah.
naturally.
Thank you. Would someone like to move that we, oh, you already moved. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of adopting the findings as stated by Vice Chair Kelly? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Mr. Bingham?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So, thank you, Attorney Dash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Thank you for persevering so late into the evening. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dash.
All right. The next item on we have a series of minutes that we have to review and approve tonight. January, February, March, and March. Who has actually read them?
Given the lateness, I'm wondering whether we ought to hold these for our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, there are some minutes that you do need to approve because we are approaching the third meeting after which the minutes were taken, and you need to have those approved according to open meeting law. So at the very least, the first couple, the March meetings you could put off until the June meeting, but the other minutes you really, I think a quick vote could be taken on those.
Okay, thank you, Ms. White, for clarifying.
Sure.
And I don't have those open. Did those come in the same packages? No, those were.
They did. There were three Word documents.
They were, yeah, they were sent on April 28th at 1:17 p.m.
Oh, yes. Huh, you got yours at 1:17?
I did.
I got mine at 1:16. I know who matters, right? Okay. Big note. So we need to at least address the first two, is what we're saying. Just look through it.
That's January and February then, is those?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Sorry, folks, the document crashed my program. Okay, is anybody still reading the January minutes?
No.
So let's start off with that. I don't have any changes. Does anybody have any changes to that?
No.
No.
None that I saw.
I didn't. So can I move? Can I move that we approve the January 25 minutes?
I'll second that.
Probably better to invite somebody else to make the motion, so I will do that.
Okay, I've always wondered, am I allowed to invite Mr. Bauer to make that motion? He has done that, and seconded by
I will second.
Mr.
Yes.
Kelly. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And let's do a roll call of Mr. Falvey.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Bauer.
Yes.
Mr. Bingham.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, then we're going to move to the February minutes.
In the first section, there's a comment from Ron Cavallo, and his name is misspelled. There's the first instance under public comment on page 2, which is correct, and then below it says it adds an R and an H, which are not in the statement.
The first spelling is correct.
Yes, I believe the first spelling is correct. So here's a question. On page 5, under 17 Allen Street, the public comment, Ron Cavallo, he did state that the owner of this building is a city employee of 27 years and feels that this blah, 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 owner has economic issues. He was conflating that with on Woodbine, the property that had been reviewed in the fall on Woodbine, but that's not an accurate detail about 17 Allen Street. So do we add something to the notes from us, like as this didn't happen in the meeting, but for the record, this statement is incorrect regarding 17 Allen?
The minutes are to capture what was stated at a meeting. So I'm not sure that I would add commentary to it. If anything were to go to court or some such thing like that, then we'd figure it out then.
Putting it in like brackets so that it was clear that this was not, this is sort of a clarification after the fact.
I would hesitate to do that only because, well, I have to think about that. I would hesitate to do that because that's just not the purpose of the minutes. The purpose of the minutes is only to capture what people say, whether or not what people say is correct.
Okay.
For example, there have been other times when I know people have made a lot of misstatements about particular properties and we don't correct those either. So we just let them stand as they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I would kind of concur with that. This is just a reflection of what he said, and it's for some other reader to decide if it's accurate or not.
Okay.
But it's good to bring up because it was a misstatement. All right, I don't have any changes to these minutes. Does anybody else? Other than the one that was brought up by Vice Chair Kelly.
I couldn't find anything.
Okay.
No, that's it.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Second,
I'm sorry, of which date, please?
I'm sorry, February, is it February 15th?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes for February 15th.
second,
2022.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's do a roll call. Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bauer,
yes.
Mr. Bingham,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So if people would like to, we could punt the other two to the next week's hearing, sounds like.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
sounds
there a
like it's
fourth
no
one?
less crowded from what I understand.
Is there a fourth set of minutes? I thought there was only one more, the March one. Do we have
I think
April minutes?
Right, I think that well, this is the April meeting that you're doing right now. So you did receive one set of minutes from March, and then the other set of minutes was from the public hearing in March for 125 Highlands Avenue that were finished too close to being able to provide them to you in order to have for tonight. So you'll have them for next week.
So as the person who had originally suggested that we push stuff off, I feel like there's only one more set for us to approve tonight.
Yeah.
Let's do it and be done.
Yeah.
Fine by me. Okay. There's an E missing in my name under commissioners. Not that I care, I'm used to it. Okay, I don't have any other comments other than the spelling of my last name. Anybody else?
And at least one place in the March ones, March minutes, Eric, there's an S at the end. So sometimes the E is left off and sometimes an S is added. I have a matter of form, which is that throughout, typically the last item is it says the chair takes the, but it doesn't say what the results were of the roll call.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
Sure. That,
I'm sorry, not Mr. Chairman. I'm thinking back 2 chairs ago.
I'm no longer the chairman. So this is a matter of form. So for example, on page 1, it says vote, which actually should be vote. 6-0 in favor of the motion. Motion passes. Chair Parks takes the roll call, but it doesn't say what the actual roll call vote was. And
That
some
should be in there.
places where there are that and those, it's at least implicit because it is already said what the vote was on it. In some places, particularly with regard to findings, it doesn't say what the vote is at all. On page 5, for example, it says the vote was 0-5, motion, and it failed. It said the chair takes the roll call. And then after that, for the findings, it lists 4-0 to accept the findings. But there are other places where it doesn't do that at all. So on page 7 for findings, it says the chair takes the roll call but does not give the vote. I think it's implicit that it was 0 in favor and how everybody voted. But I think it's a matter of form. That's probably insufficient.
Yep. So would you like to see these again at the next meeting, or would you like to vote with the proviso that those errors be corrected?
I would do the latter.
I agree.
Except where it's a split vote, it's clear what the vote is, so it can be put in.
Yeah.
None of those appear to have split votes and nobody remembers a split vote.
Okay. We can do that.
That's fine with me. Okay.
So correcting the spelling of the chairman's name and putting in the votes where they are merely implied.
I move that we vote to accept the March minutes as corrected as Mr. Bauer just described.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
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 Sorry,
Opposed?
the March, which ones? Which March
Okay.
minutes?
15th.
March 15th, thank you.
March 15th meeting minutes, yes. All in favor of accepting March 15th minutes as moved by Vice Chair Kelly? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All, Mr. Falvey?
Abstaining, was not present.
Oh, Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bauer?
Yes.
Ellen, if you disappeared?
No, I'm here. Yes. Oh,
You're not on my
camera's on.
screen. Oh, okay. You
I'm
voted yes, and I
staring
vote
at
yes.
the side of me. Sorry.
I vote yes, so those minutes are approved as well with those changes. That's it, unless anyone has a EPC update that's on the agenda. Anything to add about that?
Well, I was away for the last CPC meeting, so unfortunately I've got nothing to report. I'll do a report next time. It'll be a more extensive report.
Adjourned is the next, so the next meeting is next week, basically.
That is correct.
So
So
nice-
next- It's your regular May meeting that is next Tuesday.
I was gonna say, it's been so nice to spend the entire evening with all of you. Let's do it again next week.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Thank you, Dick. I really appreciate that.
It's meeting o'clock somewhere.
Yes, exactly. Well, so that you don't belabor it any longer, is somebody going to make a motion to adjourn?
So
Make a
moved.
motion to adjourn.
Okay, I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's do a roll call. Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bingham.
Yes.
Oh, and Mr. Bauer, I skipped over you.
Yes.
And I vote yes. There we have it. We're no
Great.
longer meeting. See you,
Thank you
everybody.
all.
Thank you, all boys.
Thank you to my colleagues who helped out tonight, and nice to see all of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Thank you for all your help, folks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.